Real God Ziyi died long ago. I killed him. However, he was pretty good. Before he died, he cornered me into a desperate situation, and the space that I was in was sealed off from the outside world entirely. I couldn't send any message for you to come and rescue me, but I could rely on my own capabilities. However, I am lucky enough to be able to survive and escape from a desperate situation alive. Jian Wushuang smiled. Is that so? Hall Master Yuan creased his eyebrows. He knew Jian Wushuang's character well. If even Jian Wushuang had said it was a desperate situation, the encounter must be beyond imagination. Regardless, it's great that you managed to escape. I and all experts from Lineage of Star can finally let out a breath of relief. Hall Master Yuan smiled. Oh yeah, where are you exactly? Let me send the experts from Lineage of Star over immediately to escort you back. Escort? Jian Wushuang refused. There's no need. I can come back on my own. There's no need? Jian Wushuang, I'm afraid you do not know what kind of situation you are in now. Hall Master Yuan smiled faintly. Why? Jian Wushuang couldn't help but ask. 100 years ago, when you were after real God Ziyi in the core region, it spread across wildfire and it stirred a hubbub. Many higher-ups in Soaring Heaven King Palace were notified, especially when you and real God Ziyi disappeared. Soaring Heaven King Palace was furious too. They immediately sent many experts to the 8th layer to search for you and real God Ziyi. They continued to do that for 100 years and they never stopped. On the contrary, Soaring Heaven King Palace sent more and more experts. They even paid a great price to hire some top chaotic real gods. Their intentions are, firstly, they had a string of hope that real God Ziyi might not have been dead. Secondly, to kill me? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. I'm glad you know that. From the hunt back then, real God Ziyi should be dead from the desperate situation. However, although you were lost, you were most likely not dead. Soaring Heaven King Palace has been barbaric all this while. You continuously killed 2 of their chaotic real gods. Why would they let you off the hook? Hall Master Yuan smirked coldly. Hence, it's best that you find a place to hide for now and wait until the experts from Lineage of Star arrive. Over the years, we of Lineage of Star have also sent many experts to the 8th layer to look for you. Although not as many as Soaring Heaven King Palace, as long as they are with you, it shouldn't be that easy for Soaring Heaven King Palace to kill you. I see. Jian Wushuang smiled. He understood what Hall Master Yuan meant, but he replied with a smile. Hall Master Yuan, you don't have to go through the trouble. I can return on my own. Jian Wushuang, you? Hall Master Yuan was shocked. Hall Master Yuan, I have something that I have yet to tell you. During the time when I was in a desperate situation, I broke through and became an eternal real god, Jian Wushuang said. Broke through? Hall Master Yuan was surprised. He knew that it didn't take long for Jian Wushuang to break through from universe god to void real god. It was at most a few hundred years. In such a short period, he broke through from being a void real god to become an eternal real god. How did he progress so quickly? Jian Wushuang, are you really confident? Hall Master Yuan was uncertain. Of course, the current me is not someone who could be dealt with so easily, Jian Wushuang said confidently. If so, all right then. However, if you were to fight with the experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace, I would still let the surrounding experts from Lineage of Star move in your direction, Hall Master Yuan said. Sure. Jian Wushuang nodded. After texting with Hall Master Yuan, Jian Wushuang let out a breath. He suddenly looked at the end of the boundless dark void. Soaring Heaven King Palace, I hoped that you'd be wiser. Otherwise, there was boundless chill soaring in Jian Wushuang's eyes. In the boundless, dark void, there was cold aura. In a dark land, there were over 20 star demons gathered. Suddenly, there was a silver flowing light that plunged into the star demons like a bolt of lightning. Then, a massacre took place. Over 20 star demons were wiped out by the silver flowing light in an instant. The silver flowing light dispersed and revealed a cold-looking elder in silver armor. There was dim light in the cold-looking elder's eyes. He had a smile plastered across his face, but his smile was malicious. Shirgu, you are pretty carefree. You have the intention to kill these star demons. a red-robed figure appeared next to the cold-looking elder from nowhere. The red-robed figure belonged to a handsome young man. The two of them were top chaotic real gods. We have been searching for more than 100 years, but we have never seen real god Ziyi and Jian Wushuang. I reckon that both of them already met death together. It would be a waste of time if we continued to search for them. I might as well spend some time on hunting star demons. The demon cores are good, the cold-looking elder said. Humph, don't forget that Soaring Heaven King Palace hired you at a great price. It's not right for you to hunt star demons. The red-robed handsome man's voice was cold. Don't worry. Only hunting a few star demons won't interrupt our main goal, the elder said. The red-robed handsome man couldn't say anything more. Just then, the cold-looking elder's face suddenly grew solemn. Someone's here. The red-robed handsome man immediately noticed, and his eyes looked to the void afar at the first instant. There was a figure plunging over slowly. He looked handsome and extremely young. He was in crimson robe and there was a sword on his back. There was no power, but he let out the aura of an expert at all times. The originally carefree cold-looking elder and the red-robed handsome man saw the incomer and their eyes dilated in shock. This outfit, this appearance? It's Jian Wushuang. It's him. Hallmaster, I found Jian Wushuang. He's alive. He is near me. The red-robed handsome man immediately exclaimed in surprise. At the same time, he instantly sent a message to Soaring Heaven King Palace. We finally found him and happened to be found by us. The cold-looking elder looked delighted. Let's go. The red-robed handsome man's eyes shimmered with joy. At the very next moment, the two figures plunged out and instantly appeared in the void before Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, who was traveling forward, could feel the two of them approaching, and he immediately stopped his steps and looked up. So fast. Jian Wushuang smirked and formed a malicious smile. Jian Wushuang, I finally found you. The red-robed handsome man and the cold-looking elder glared at Jian Wushuang, and their eyes boiled with rage. One is real god Chang Tian from Soaring Heaven King Palace. As for the other one, Jian Wushuang looked at the other cold-looking elder and squinted his eyes. The resentment between Soaring Heaven King Palace and I have nothing to do with you, real god Shirgu. It really had nothing to do with me. However, Soaring Heaven King Palace paid a great price and I am really interested in you, an inverse cultivator. The cold-looking real god Shirgu smiled maliciously. Is that so? Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. It seems that the fight between Soaring Heaven King Palace and I is inevitable regardless. That's funny. You killed two chaotic real gods from Soaring Heaven King Palace. For that incident alone, you deserve to die. The red-robed handsome man, real god Chang Tian roared. I deserve to die? I will wait then. Jian Wushuang didn't care. As he spoke, there was a fierce aura that soared from his body. Real god Chang Tian's face changed. Something's not right. Why? Real god Shirgu asked. His aura, it's an aura that an eternal real god would have. Jian Wushuang already broke through and became an eternal real god. Real god Chang Tian exclaimed in surprise. What? Real god Shirgu was shocked too. From what they knew, Jian Wushuang had only broken through and become a void real god not too long ago. Just how many years had it been since he had already reached the level of eternal real god? Previously, he was only a void real god and he could kill real god Ziyi. Now that he has broken through again, his power has definitely increased tremendously. He might be able to compare favorably with experts on real god ranking list. With just the two of us, we can't do anything about him. Let us retreat for now. When the other experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace arrive, hem him in and kill him together, real god Chang Tian said. Real god Shirgu looked unhappy. Although he was upset, he nodded heavily. He wasn't stupid either and he wouldn't make fun of his own life. Retreat! The two top chaotic real god immediately retreated and they obviously wanted to give up the idea to fight Jian Wushuang. But, just as they turned and wanted to leave, the two of you don't need to run. A cold voice suddenly resounded in their heads. Real god Chang Tian and real god Shirgu looked at everything in front of them in shock. They saw that Jian Wushuang, who was originally far away from them, had taken one leap and appeared in front of them like a bolt of lightning, leaving countless shadows behind him. This speed, real god Chang Tian and real god Shirgu were astonished. At that very moment, Jian Wushuang lifted his hand. He didn't draw his sword but merely punched them. Rumble. It was a simple punch, but it contained an extremely terrifying diving power, and it continued to magnify itself in front of them. The divine power alone made the two top chaotic real gods quiver in fear. There was an unprecedented terror in their eyes, and they tried their best to withstand it. Then, they made a final struggle and performed their attacks, but they were still suppressed by the punch. In the end, they could only watch as Jian Wushuang's fist swung at them. Hall Master, Jian Wushuang. Real god Chang Tian didn't even send one a complete message in time. Bang! Bang! The fist was magnified by a few folds. Then, it landed on both real god Chang Tian and real god Shirgu's heads at the same time. Instantly, both of their heads popped. The two top chaotic real god instantly died. Divine power comparable favorably with an almighty. It's pretty easy to kill an ordinary chaotic real god. Jian Wushuang looked at the two cold dead bodies that fell as a smile spread across his face. He didn't use any skill on purpose with the earlier punch. Merely his own divine power. He had merely suppressed them using his divine power, and the two top chaotic real gods had been eliminated. That was the huge difference in power between an almighty and a chaotic real god. As the two real gods saw me, I was definite that they sent my location to Soaring Heaven King Palace. It seems that, in no time, there'll be other experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace here soon. Jian Wushuang smiled as he took all the treasures from the two real gods into his own Qian Kuan ring. Soaring Heaven King Palace. Come on. Soaring Heaven King Palace, in a lofty palace. Real god Chang Tian sent a message. They saw Jian Wushuang. Soaring Heaven King Palace Master. That's great. I finally found that son of a bitch. They found Jian Wushuang. How about Ziyi? The higher-ups of Soaring Heaven King Palace in the hall became anxious. Real god Chang Tian only saw Jian Wushuang but didn't see Ziyi around. If I'm not mistaken, Ziyi should have passed. A golden-robed man who looked cold raged furiously. Jian Wushuang killed two chaotic real gods from Soaring Heaven King Palace. Regardless, he has to die. Send down my command. All experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace must immediately rush to where real god Chang Tian is. Yes, there was someone who took the order immediately to send down his command. Hold on. The golden-robed man suddenly waved, and there was anger in his eyes. He had received the incomplete message that real god Chang Tian had sent before he had died. Real god Chang Tian has already died. Besides, real god Shirgu, who was with him in the 8th lair, should be dead too. The golden-robed man said in a low voice. What? The higher-ups of Soaring Heaven King Palace, who were standing at a lower platform, were angry. Real god Chang Tian and real god Shirgu were both top chaotic real gods. With the two of them joining forces, unless one was an expert that possessed fighting power of an expert on real god ranking list, it would definitely be impossible for him to kill two of them in such a short period of time. Jian Wushuang possibly already possesses the fighting power of one on the real god ranking list. Maybe he has other experts around him who have the fighting power of one on the real god ranking list. The golden-robed man said coldly. Send my command down. Tell all experts of Soaring Heaven King Palace to not take action recklessly before gathering enough power. Do not fight with Jian Wushuang. Even if Jian Wushuang takes the initiative to find them, try to avoid him. Wait until we gather a formation that is sufficient to kill him. Then we will hem him in. Also, tell Han Quan to return from the 6th lair and head over to the 8th lair together to kill Jian Wushuang. And tell them that from real god Guing to real god Ziyi, and now real god Chang Tian, we Soaring Heaven King Palace has 3 chaotic real gods that died in Jian Wushuang's hands. It is a great humiliation to Soaring Heaven King Palace. If Jian Wushuang doesn't die, where will Soaring Heaven King Palace's dignity be? Hence, in the next fight, not only should we kill Jian Wushuang, we also have to show our dignity. We have to let Sanctuary Alliance and all forces in Eternal Chaotic World know what is the outcome of offending Soaring Heaven King Palace. In the fight, no matter what kind of obstacle we run into, with the involvement of experts from Lineage of Star, we should hold no scruples and kill everyone. Soaring Heaven King Palace Master sent down his command, and it instantly stirred up a great commotion in Soaring Heaven King Palace. Especially the last part of Soaring Heaven King Palace's speech. Regardless of the intervention, have no scruples. Kill them all. He had even highlighted Lineage of Star in his command. Soaring Heaven King Palace obviously wanted to establish their dignity in the fight. As they intended to do so, they had to show everyone. Hence, they had sent the command without covering up and spread it directly. It spread to Thunderbolt Island as well as the entire Sanctuary Alliance. It instantly caused a hubbub in Sanctuary Alliance. To kill the number 1 genius from Lineage of Star without having any scruples? Even if the experts from Lineage of Star get involved, kill them all? Soaring Heaven King Palace is trying to start a fight with Lineage of Star. They are definitely starting a fight. Jian Wushuang is Lineage of Star's precious one. Lineage of Star wouldn't let anything happen to him. They definitely will send a bunch of experts to rescue him. By then, they definitely would fight with Soaring Heaven King Palace directly. Soaring Heaven King Palace is very strong. However, ever since Lineage of Star got the 2 white blaze fruit trees, their foundation and power haven't been much weaker than Soaring Heaven King Palace's. If the 2 overlords were to fight with one another, TSK, that'd be interesting. Countless top experts from all forces of Sanctuary Alliance found out about the news as well. Everyone was looking forward to the fight. Among Sanctuary Alliance, there were great forces that had gotten into war because of their disputes. It was very common. There were even times when forces had been exterminated from it. All forces in Sanctuary Alliance were used to it since long ago. Now they were just watching the 2 overlords. In the core region of the 8th layer. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. As soon as the experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace, who were scattered around the core region looking for Jian Wushuang, received the command, they rushed over to the location of Real God Chang Tian immediately. Plus, they were informed about Real God Chang Tian and Real God Shirgu's deaths. Hence, they were taking action in groups very cautiously. In the void, there were 3 figures plunging forward. The 3 of them were top chaotic real gods. There was one that had come from Soaring Heaven King Palace. As for the other 2, they were solo experts hired by Soaring Heaven King Palace. In Eternal Chaotic World, there were many powerful solo experts who were unafraid of all forces. As long as the price offered was high enough, they wouldn't even care if they had to offend other major forces. After all, it wouldn't be that easy if the major forces wanted to kill them as well. Then, in order to kill Jian Wushuang, Soaring Heaven King Palace had hired more than 10 solo experts. The 3 people who were plunging forward at high speed suddenly stopped. A gray-robed old lady who was in the middle turned to look in the dark void behind. I wonder who are the few that have been tailing the 3 of us? What's the purpose? The gray-robed old lady looked fragile, but her voice was bright and contained power that spread in all directions. Then, the experts who followed the 3 of them never revealed themselves, but there was a burst of laughter. Old monster Xianxia, we don't want to do anything. We just want to watch. After all, we don't know where Jian Wushuang is. We can only find him if we follow you. Yeah, go ahead with yours. We will not get involved in the fight between you and Lineage of Star. A fight between Soaring Heaven King Palace and Lineage of Star. It's a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. We don't want to miss it. The gray-robed old lady squinted her eyes when she heard the laughter. If everyone is really here to watch, go ahead and follow us. Let me say this first. If any of you think of getting involved when the fight starts, Soaring Heaven King Palace won't let any of you off the hook, the gray-robed old lady said. Then, she turned to continue to rush her journey. Xianxia, wouldn't it be too great of a move that Soaring Heaven King Palace is pulling? An expert who was flying alongside the gray-robed lady asked casually. Soaring Heaven King Palace is trying to show dignity. Naturally, the more spectators the merrier, the other person said with a smirk. Stop joking. We are nearing the location of Jian Wushuang. By then, we'll rely heavily on the 2 of you, the gray-robed old lady said. Don't you worry about it. As the two of us agreed to help Soaring Heaven King Palace, we will naturally give our best shot. The two of them agreed heartily. Then, Soaring Heaven King Palace took the initiative to attack, and it spread like wildfire in Sanctuary Alliance. Those experts who were wandering in the 8th lair naturally knew about it too. Hence, they purposely rushed over as well. Plus, there were many pairs of eyes in Sanctuary Alliance who were watching the upcoming fight closely. The fight could be said to be a public attraction. In boundless darkness, there was a barren land with no signs of life. Jian Wushuang didn't opt to plunge into the void but walked step by step on the land. He walked very slowly. It had been a few days since he had killed real god Chang Tian and real god Shirgu. Over the past few days, he had walked for less than 10,000 miles. It was as though he didn't move at all but was waiting for strong opponents to come by. In actual fact, he was really waiting for the experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace. Jian Wushuang, my friend, the movement that you have caused is extraordinary. There was an expert from Soaring Heaven King Palace who sent me a message earlier. They offered me a great price for me to assist them to kill you. Honestly, Soaring Heaven King Palace lives up to their reputation as a top major force. They were very generous in their offer. Even I was very tempted. Haha, Brother Penghua, did you agree with them? Jian Wushuang and real god Penghua were chatting casually. Don't you know me yet? I never make trouble with anyone else. Even if there are benefits, I would never offend anyone for no reason. Plus, we are friends to begin with. Why would I fight with you for some offered benefits? Real god Penghua laughed. That's a pity. I thought I would have a chance to fight Brother Penghua. Jian Wushuang joked. You want to fight with me? Head to Thunderbolt Island and we can do that. By then, we can even catch up over a drink. Real god Penghua was very enthusiastic. No problem. Jian Wushuang nodded, but he suddenly paused. Brother Penghua, talk to you later. The experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace have found me. Jian Wushuang replied. Be careful. Soaring Heaven King Palace aren't nice people to offend. Real god Penghua exhorted. They aren't nice. But I am not either. Jian Wushuang smiled coldly. Then, he cut off his connection with real god Penghua. On the land in darkness, Jian Wushuang lifted his eyes and looked in one direction. His soul power had already detected the 3 approaching auras from the direction. The 3 auras belonged to 3 top chaotic real gods. The experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace have learned their lessons. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. The 3 top chaotic real gods who appeared within the coverage of his soul power stopped nearby but didn't come nearer to fight with him. It was obvious that they intended to wait for more experts to gather. When they had a stronger formation, they'd attack him. Jian Wushuang couldn't be bothered. He pretended that he didn't notice the 3 experts and continued to move forward slowly. As time passed, there were more and more experts that appeared around Jian Wushuang. The experts who were from Soaring Heaven King Palace and those who were hired by Soaring Heaven King Palace made a total of 7. A total of 7 top chaotic real god and 2 had the power of 1 who was extremely close in fighting power of 1 on the real god ranking list. Such a formation was very strong. However, Soaring Heaven King Palace wasn't in a hurry to attack him. Jian Wushuang, real god Huanyu and I are nearby. There was suddenly a message. Oh, real god Duanyen. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Real god Duanyen and real god Huan, you were 2 tops chaotic real gods in Lineage of Star. When the experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace were approaching Jian Wushuang, the experts from Lineage of Star naturally followed. However, in terms of formation, the difference was vast. It wasn't because there was a vast difference between Lineage of Star and Soaring Heaven King Palace, but because Lineage of Star didn't pay a great price to hire experts for help. Hall Master Yuan wanted to do so, but Jian Wushuang had rejected him. We are doomed. Soaring Heaven King Palace has already gathered 7 top chaotic real gods around himself. Even an expert on real god ranking list has to avoid such a team formation. The 3 of us won't be able to match evenly, real god Duanyen said in a low voice. Maybe. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. Jian Wushuang, these experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace came for you. Why don't you look anxious at all? Real god Duanyen was shocked at his calmness. It will eventually come anyway. What's the use of being anxious? Jian Wushuang smiled but didn't care. You're so positive. Real God Duanyen pouted, but suddenly. There were suddenly 3 more fierce auras that popped into the range of Jian Wushuang's soul power coverage. The 3 auras quickly gathered with the other 7 experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace. Another 3? Real God Duanyen was shocked. Shit! Real God Huan Yu looked solemn. Previously, there were only 7 top chaotic real gods and they were already far beyond what we could withstand. But now, there are another 3. A total of 10 top chaotic real gods. Among them, there are 2 who are extremely close to real god ranking list. This team formation is terrifying. Jian Wushuang, hurry up and run. Huan Yu and I will try our best to help you. Real God Duanyen said. I will perform Heart of Sea Region in collaboration with Realm Treasure. I should be able to hold them back for a while. You seized the chance. Real God Huan Yu said. The 2 real gods were obviously anxious. Actually, you don't have to. Jian Wushuang had yet to finish his sentence. They are going to attack. Real God Duanyen's gaze fixed. In the dark void before Jian Wushuang, the 10 figures flew over at the same time at an extremely fast speed. The aura of the 10 figures was shockingly strong. The moment one moves, he immediately attracted the attention of the experts in the surrounding void. They are attacking. Soaring Heaven King Palace is finally attacking. They gathered a total of 10 top chaotic real gods before they attack. Soaring Heaven King Palace is cautious. Among the 10 top chaotic real gods, there are 2 who are extremely close to real god ranking list. Such a team formation, even if a true expert on real god ranking list came across this formation, I reckon he could only turn and flee. The experts that had gathered in the nearby void to watch were getting excited. They followed the experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace to watch the fight. They want to witness a top geniuses passing with their own eyes. In the dark void, the top chaotic real gods from Soaring Heaven King Palace appeared in the void before Jian Wushuang, and they let out a billowing murderous intention. Jian Wushuang, you have to die. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the terrifying explosion noise, there was boundless divine might that pressed at Jian Wushuang. However, before they could get close to Jian Wushuang, there was suddenly a lady in white that appeared before Jian Wushuang. The lady in white was graceful. She held a sword in her left hand and a unique compass in her right hand. Heart of Sea Region. Whirling world. Rumble. Sea water in jade green swept out and flooded the universe. Instantly, it formed billowing waves that were tens of thousands zhang tall. The billowing waves lapped and covered the 10 experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace. That is real God Huan Yu from Lineage of Star. Real God Duanyen is here too. The 2 of them want to stop us so that Jian Wushuang will have a chance to flee. Humph! Dream on. Palace Master commanded that we hold no scruples. As the experts from Lineage of Star dare to get involved, we will kill them altogether. Die! The 10 top chaotic real god took out their divine weapons simultaneously. At the same time, there were various auras that spread out. Some were like scorching hot flames, others like sturdy mountains. There were even some who wielded their huge axes and slashed the first 10,000 tall waves that swept at them. Jian Wushuang, let's hurry up and leave. Real God Duanyen roared. Real God Huan Yu and he wanted to flee at first instant. The 2 of them had never thought of fighting head-on with the 10 top chaotic real god. That was simply courting death. However, just as they prepared to leave, Jian Wushuang, who stood on the dark land, suddenly lifted his head and his cold eyes let out 2 substantiated lights as he looked at the 10 top chaotic real gods. Suddenly, there was an instant murderous intention that soared up. Swoosh! A ghostly figure burst out and left behind countless shadows in the void. The ghostly figure pierced Sea of Heart region that real god Huan Yu performed and appeared before the 10 top chaotic real gods. The sight shocked the experts at the scene, including those experts who were watching in the dark. They were all astonished. Everyone could tell that real god Huan Yu had performed Sea of Heart region and Whirling World with his all in order to create a chance for Jian Wushuang to flee and survive. Everyone thought so, including real god Huan Yu and real god Duanyen themselves. But in the end, Jian Wushuang didn't run away but barged out alone. He came before the 10 top chaotic real gods. Jian Wushuang. Real god Duanyen and real god Huanyu saw Jian Wushuang's action, and they were shocked. Especially real god Huanyu, it wasn't easy for her to perform Sea of Heart region and Whirling World at the same time. As for the 10 top chaotic real gods from Soaring Heaven King Palace, they were first astonished. Then they laughed. Jian Wushuang is courting death. If the 10 of us team up, even if he really has the fighting power of one on real god ranking list, he will only be suppressed. As he wants to die, I shall grant him his wish. Die! The 10 real gods had murderous intention billowing, and their cold gazes were fixed upon Jian Wushuang. The following scene made the 10 real gods starred with their eyes wide open. Jian Wushuang appeared in front of them and pointed with his right index finger. Rumble. There was boundless divine power gathering. Instantly, there was a huge hand that seemed to appear from ancient times. The huge index finger pointed with a layer of dim light as though it contained a complete reincarnation doctrine. Ancient God's fifth finger. Get through difficulty finger. The huge finger pressed over and the 10 real gods stunned. Not only them, but also real gods Duanyen and real god Huanyu afar, including the experts hidden in the nearby void, were all dumbfounded. Too powerful. The power contained in the finger was too powerful. It was so powerful that it exceeded the top chaotic real god level. Even on the real god ranking list, there were definitely very few who could perform an attack of such a level. The strength of the one finger had yet to explode entirely. Merely an attack could make all 10 real gods from Soaring Heaven King Palace feel like their scalps were tearing. Power. How could it be so powerful? Real god Duanyen muttered. He didn't know that Jian Wushuang's divine power was at the level of an almighty's. He performed Ancient God's fifth finger with his divine power of an almighty level. How could it not be powerful? Hurry up. Don't just stand there. Work together to block this finger. A raging voice suddenly rang from the 10 real gods. The 10 real gods immediately came back to reality and took action one after another. As top chaotic real god, they were all experts in each corner of eternal chaotic world. However, the 10 chaotic real gods took action simultaneously and performed their killer tactics, just to block the huge finger that was attacking them. However, even though the 10 of them had joined forces, the outcome was bang. There was a ferocious noise that shook heaven and earth. The space-time exploded entirely. At the same time as the space-time exploded, poof, 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 poof. The 10 real gods spurted out a mouthful of blood and 10 figures flew back from the impact. He fought against 10 alone head-on, but in the end, the 10 real gods were defeated. Just as the 10 real gods flew back from the impact, Blood Mountain's sword appeared in Jian Wushuang's hand, and there was suddenly a terrifying sword intention and murderous intention swoosh. With boundless shadows, Jian Wushuang's figure appeared before a top chaotic real god, who was closest to him. Then, Blood Mountain's sword in his hand was swung out mercilessly. The sword was swung like a bolt of lightning that contained fierce divine power that an almighty had, and also with the power of reincarnation. Be careful! There was someone who shouted a reminder in time from the side. The brawny man in red armor was shocked. He immediately wielded the saber in his hand and slashed. He wanted to block Jian Wushuang's stroke. Dang! There was a low thud and the saber in the brawny man's hand flew out. The cold sword light pierced the brawny man's head. After it killed the brawny man, the cold sword light didn't grow weaker but continued to slash at the black-haired graceful lady behind. What? The black-haired graceful lady never thought that the sword light would continue to swing at her. Hence, she couldn't dodge in time. Pest! The sword light pierced the black-haired graceful lady's body and dispersed gradually. The sight shocked everyone on the spot. It was a fierce finger earlier that suppressed 10 real gods head-on. Then, it was a close sword stroke, a casual stroke that killed 2 top chaotic real gods directly. What kind of fighting power was that? Quang. The figure moved in a ghostly fashion again. It brought along boundless shadows and appeared behind a black-haired brawny elder. The same stroke with fierce divine power, merely suppressing one with force. Although the black-haired brawny man withstood it with his all, He was killed by Jian Wushuang with one stroke. Quang! 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 His ghostly figure continued to move and he continued to swing out sword lights. Every stroke contained murderous intention. Pest! 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 The figures were slashed or pierced one after another at an unbelievable speed. In an instant, less than a breath's time, the entire void resumed tranquility. In the dark void, Jian Wushuang stood there coldly and slowly put Blood Mountain's sword in its scabbard. Surrounding him were 9 floating cold dead bodies. Although they were dead, there was fierce divine power left in the bodies, which was the reason their bodies didn't fall below instantly. Jian Wushuang lifted his head to look in one direction. At the end of his sight, there was a black-robed old lady. The black-robed old lady was real god Xianxia from Soaring Heaven King Palace. "You are quite lucky." Jian Wushuang broke into a smile. The smile looked just like a demon's smile in real god Xianxia's eyes. She saw the 9 cold dead bodies floating around Jian Wushuang. There was astonishment and unprecedented glee in her eyes. She should be glad that she was lucky and fast enough in her response that she could escape in time. Otherwise, she definitely would be one of the dead bodies. In the nearby void, the experts hidden in the dark became quiet. Everyone was looking at Jian Wushuang, who was standing right in the middle of the void. With his power alone, he matched evenly with 10 top chaotic real gods. Among them, there were 2 peak experts who were extremely close to real god ranking list. But in the end, in an instant, less than a breath's time, 9 out of the 10 real gods were massacred. There was only real god Xianxia, who survived through sheer luck. Astonishing. Shocking. Everyone found it unbelievable. One should know just how great a formation it was with 10 top chaotic real gods joining forces. Even if it were expert on real god ranking list, those who were on higher ranking, they should be able to match evenly. However, they were fighting against Jian Wushuang and they were massacred directly. Plus, the speed of massacre was extremely fast. Jian Wushuang. Real god Duanyan and real god Huanyu appeared in front of Jian Wushuang and the 2 of them were astonished. Jian Wushuang flashed a smile at the 2 of them. "I wanted to tell you earlier that, actually, we don't have to flee." Hearing what Jian Wushuang had said, real god Duanyan and real god Huan, you didn't know if they should cry or laugh. If they were to know that Jian Wushuang was that powerful, they, of course, wouldn't need to flee. Most importantly, Jian Wushuang had never once showed his power. Although they heard that he had killed real god Changtian and real god Shigu, no one showed the fight after all, nor did anyone know how Jian Wushuang or what measure Jian Wushuang took to kill the 2 real gods. Hence, his power was still a mystery. Until then, when Jian Wushuang had put his true power on display. The moment he revealed it, it shocked heaven and earth. "Let's go then," Jian Wushuang said. Real god Duanyan and real god Huan Yu exchanged a look and followed Jian Wushuang as he left. From the beginning until the end, Jian Wushuang's expression had been fairly calm. To him, then, the top chaotic real gods were not challenging at all. Forget if there were 10 top chaotic real gods who teamed up, even if there were 20, he could easily massacre them. He naturally wouldn't be smug with success with his battle achievements. He didn't care, but the others cared. 10 top chaotic real gods from Soaring Heaven King Palace besieged Jian Wushuang, and he massacred 9 real gods directly in less than a breath's time with his power alone. The news immediately transformed into a shocking storm and swept across the entire Sanctuary Alliance. In Sanctuary Alliance, all forces and solo experts knew that Soaring Heaven King Palace and Lineage of Star were going to fight long ago. Hence, they were anticipating the result too. However, when the news about the fight spread, the experts in Sanctuary Alliance were dumbfounded. No one had expected that Jian Wushuang would be able to massacre 9 top real gods with his power alone. There was no one who expected that Jian Wushuang's power would have increased at such a large scale in merely 100 years. It was simply unbelievable. To Soaring Heaven King Palace, the bad news hit them like a thunderbolt. Their original intention in the fight had been to show dignity and serve as a deterrent force to all forces. But in the end, they had suffered such a great loss. Even though, among the 9 top chaotic real gods, there were 7 solo experts who were hired by Soaring Heaven King Palace. Soaring Heaven King Palace had lost 2 of their chaotic real gods. To Soaring Heaven King Palace, it was a great loss. On top of that, in addition to those that Jian Wushuang had killed earlier, they had suffered an even greater loss. Soaring Heaven King Palace Master was furious. Jian Wushuang has to die. We have to split his dead body. Then, we will be able to wash away the humiliation of Soaring Heaven King Palace. Where's Han Quan? Tell him to hurry up and rush over immediately. In the core region of the 8th layer, Jian Wushuang continued to plunge forward in the void casually while Real God Duanyen and Real God Huan Yu followed behind him. Real God Lingxia continued to follow us. It seems that Soaring Heaven King Palace didn't plan to end just like that. Real God Duanyen glanced the far void. Soaring Heaven King Palace has always been barbaric. They suffer such a great loss from me. How could they just let me off the hook? Jian Wushuang smiled. Jian Wushuang, you know that Soaring Heaven King Palace will continue to send experts to come and kill you, but you travel so slowly in the void. Even I am wondering if you are intentionally waiting for the experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace to catch up. Real God Huan Yu suddenly looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's actions were really strange. Ever since he had revealed himself, he had been acting strange. If the other experts were to know that Soaring Heaven King Palace, such a major force, was after them, they would definitely opt to run away at the first instant. They would seize the time to return to Lineage of Star or Thunderbolt Island. If so, no matter how capable Soaring Heaven King Palace was, they couldn't do anything. But how about Jian Wushuang? He had been walking in the core region casually and at a slow speed. As though he was taking a casual stroll in his backyard, he was not worried at all. That was, of course, abnormal. Jian Wushuang, what's going on? Real God Duanyen looked at Jian Wushuang curiously. Jian Wushuang smiled without concealing it. I am a person who makes a clear distinction between kindnesses and wrongs. As I am already fighting against Soaring Heaven King Palace, I might as well fight till the end. Until they are willing to yield, admit defeat, or even be exterminated. Soaring Heaven King Palace wanted to show dignity through me, right? I happen to want to kill them. Hearing what Jian Wushuang had said, Real God Duanyen and Real God Huan Yu couldn't help but gasp. It was true. Jian Wushuang had done it on purpose. Just then, Jian Wushuang stopped his steps. Then he wore a strange smile on his face. Why? Real God Duanyen looked. Hall Master Yuan sent me a message earlier that Real God Han Quan has entered the 8th layer. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Real God Han Quan? Real God Duanyen was shocked. The 11th place on Real God ranking list? Real God Huan Yu was shocked. Real God ranking list was the same as Universe God ranking list. There was a total of 100 experts. They were also made of chaotic real gods. However, their fighting powers were far beyond any ordinary top chaotic real gods. It was just like Universe Gods on Universe God ranking list. The real gods listed on Real God ranking list were those on the top of the pyramid. Many experts on Real God ranking list were from various forces in Sanctuary Alliance. Of course, they were many solo experts as well. As Soaring Heaven King Palace was one of the top major forces, they naturally had real gods listed on Real God ranking list, and they had a total of 2, which was one more than Lineage of Star had. One of the 2 experts on Real God ranking list from Soaring Heaven King Palace was Real God Han Quan. He was extremely high in ranking on the Real God ranking list. He was listed in the 11th place, extremely close to the top 10 super experts. One should know that Lei Chao from Lineage of Star was ranked 20 places lower in Real God ranking list. Real God Han Quan was slightly stronger than Lei Chao. Real God ranking list, the higher their ranking, the scarier they are. Those in the top 10 are definitely superb existences of a monstrous level. Although they couldn't compare to almighties, they aren't far from one. Although Real God Han Quan isn't in the top 10, he is merely one step away. Soaring Heaven King Palace sent him. Real God Duanyen looked cold. Jian Wushuang, what can we do? Real God Huan Yu asked solemnly. What can we do? Jian Wushuang smiled. Then, he sat down on the ground. Don't panic. We will just wait for him to come here. What? Real God Duanyen and Real God Huan Yu were astonished. Jian Wushuang had found out that Real God Han Quan was coming, but not only was he not worried, He had sat down directly and waited for his arrival. Is he trying to? Real God Duan Yen and Real God Huan Yu exchanged a look. The two of them could guess Jian Wushuang's plan. From their viewpoint, it seemed a little mad. At a wasteland in the core region of the 8th layer. Swoosh! A figure appeared out of thin air. It was a young man with a slightly emaciated and pale body. His body was also filled with coldness, as if he were the abysmal hell himself. After coming to the wasteland, he closed his eyes and waited quietly in his position. Half a day later, another figure descended abruptly. This person was a giant-like, purple-robed old man who was close to 3 meters tall. Real God Han Quan, have I kept you waiting for a long time? The purple-robed old man laughed heartily. Real God Han Quan, who was the young man with a body filled with coldness, opened his eyes and looked at the person who had come. I originally thought that you would need at least a few days to get here. However, you only took half a day. Seems like your murderous intent toward Jian Wushuang is no less than the soaring Heaven King palaces. Humph, everyone knows about the grudge between me and the lineage of Star. Since such an impressive genius has appeared in the lineage of Star this time around, I naturally cannot allow him to continue to grow and become the second Star Palace Master of the lineage of Star. The purple-robed old man said coldly. That Jian Wushuang is indeed extremely talented. However, it's a pity that he is too arrogant. I have gotten news that he is currently sitting down quietly somewhere in the core region, and it is obvious that he is waiting for me, Real God Han Quan said. Waiting for you? The purple-robed old man raised his eyebrows. Previously, the soaring Heaven King Palace gathered 10 top chaotic real gods, which included 2 experts who were extremely close to the real god ranking list so that they could team up and kill him. However, they were almost wiped out by him in the end. With such abilities, it should be enough for him to rank at the very front of the real god ranking list, and he is probably not that far from me. Since our abilities are quite close, Jian Wushuang is naturally not afraid of me. Real God Han Quan continued speaking. However, he will never expect that apart from me, you will also be going to kill him. If both of us were to team up, even if it were experts in the top 10 of the real god ranking list, we would still be able to kill them. Hence, this Jian Wushuang will definitely die. The purple-robed old man laughed. Even if the both of us are unable to kill him, the soaring Heaven King Palace has also prepared another trump card. With that, he will still die. Real God Han Quan's eyes were shining with a cold light. Since that's the case, let's not delay this anymore and head over there quickly. The purple-robed old man said. All right. Real God Han Quan nodded his head. After that, both of them headed for Jian Wushuang's location immediately. In the barren dark land, Jian Wushuang was sitting down quietly with his legs crossed and his eyes were closed as well. Real God Duan Yen and Real God Huan Yu stayed beside Jian Wushuang. At present, the void nearby still has many experts. All of them knew that the matter this time round would not come to an end yet. They have come. Jian Wushuang, who was sitting down on the ground with his legs crossed, opened his eyes abruptly and a shrill light flashed in his eyes. Many experts who were near the area of void also noticed the 2 figures who were speeding over from afar immediately. 2 of them. One of them is Real God Han Quan. But who is the other person? All the experts were baffled. In no time, the 2 figures which were speeding over appeared in front of them. Among them, Real God Han Quan naturally did not require much explanation. As for the other person, he was the purple-robed old man who was close to 3 meters tall. As soon as they saw the purple-robed old man, many of the experts present were shocked. The expressions of both Real God Duan Yen and Real God Huan Yu also changed greatly. Zhou Gong, monarch of Zhou Gong Holy Kingdom. It's Real God Zhou Gong. Gosh, Real God Zhou Gong has come as well? Everyone's faces were filled with astonishment. Similarly, Real God Zhou Gong was an expert of the Real God ranking list. Moreover, his ranking was higher than Real God Han Quan's. He was a super existence who was ranked 5th on the Real God ranking list. Furthermore, everyone knew that there was a huge grudge between Real God Zhou Gong and the lineage of Star, and the grudge could also be said to be unresolved without death. For example, experts of the lineage of Star dared not step into the base of real god Zhogong Holy Kingdom. Of course, real god Zhogong also dared not appear in the Purple Moon Sanctuary. However, for the clash this time around, the main characters were Jian Wushuang and the Soaring Heaven King Palace. Hence, no one expected the Soaring Heaven King Palace to actually hire real god Zhogong over as well. Two real gods with one ranked 5th and the other ranked 11th on the real god ranking list. If they were to team up, the results would be, many eyes of sympathy looked toward Jian Wushuang. However, when Jian Wushuang saw the two experts of the real god ranking list in front of him, who was not flustered at all. Instead, he wore a smile. It will only be interesting like this. As Jian Wushuang laughed indifferently, he stood up slowly. Swoosh! Swoosh! Real god Zhogong and real god Han Quan appeared in front of Jian Wushuang at the same time, and they were standing less than 100 miles away from him. Haha! I heard a long time ago that an exceptional inverse cultivator had appeared in the lineage of Star. Today, I am finally fortunate enough to see you. Real god Zhogong was laughing loudly. Real god Zhogong, we have actually met once before, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Oh! Real god Zhogong frowned. Do you remember real god Long Qing and his group of people who you met tens of thousands of years ago when the Blood Demon Church was destroyed in your Zhogong Holy Kingdom? And that within real god Long Qing and his group of people, there was a normal person without any divine power. Jian Wushuang said. Real god Zhogong started to recall at once. In the next moment, his eyes turned grave. Is that the normal old man from back then? That's right. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. I am the one who hired real god Long Qing and his group of people of destruction, the Blood Demon Church. However, I did not expect the inverse cultivation test for the third heaven to descend at that point in time. Hence, I lost all my divine power and became an extremely weak white-haired old man. And at that point in time, I met you. However, it's a pity that you did not recognize me. Humph, I see. Seems like I carelessly let you off back then. However, it doesn't matter as I merely allowed you to live another tens of thousands of years longer. Today, you still have to die. Real god Zhogong bellowed. Real god Zhogong. There's no need to continue saying unnecessary things to him. Let's attack straight away and kill him. Real god Han Quan had a threatening and murderous look. All right. Real god Zhogong also nodded his head earnestly. At once, two frightening auras burst forth abruptly, and they headed for Jian Wushuang right away. The surrounding universe became quiet instantly as well. Jian Wushuang. Both real god Duanyen and real god Huan Yu looked toward Jian Wushuang. This is not a battle that both of you can participate in. Please retreat to the side first, Jian Wushuang said apathetically. Real god Duanyen and real god Huan Yu looked at each other and both of them felt helpless. Although both of them were top chaotic real gods, they still do not have the right to participate in a battle between experts in the real god ranking list. In particular, a battle between experts at the very front of the real god ranking list. Please be careful. After real god Duanyen spoke, he retreated far away with real god Huan Yu. In the dark land, Jian Wushuang was holding his Blood Mountain sword tightly with one hand and looking at the two experts in front of him with his eyes filled with excitement. Come. Let me see how strong the experts ranked 5th and 11th in the real god ranking list are. The void had stiffened long ago. The experts hidden in the surroundings were holding their breath as they anticipated. Suddenly, kill! Real god Han Quan let out an angry bellow. In the instant the bellow stopped, real god Han Quan and real god Zhogong suddenly pounded out. Look! Real god Zhogong was covered in strong extermination aura, just like a demon who was going to destroy heaven and earth, as he held a thick black saber in his hand. Green god extermination. Rumble. Heaven and earth shook. Real god Zhogong held the black saber in his hand and it was in constant miraculous movement. Every miraculous movement it made gave out a suffocating power explosion. There was a total of 15 moves and the black saber in his hand slashed 15 times as well. Jian Wushuang was still standing on the ground while the 15 earth-shattering blade lights were flying towards him. Every single one of the 15 blade lights could easily kill a top chaotic real god. Every single one of them was enough to strike fear in the experts at the surrounding of the battlefield. Jian Wushuang glared, and there was a boundless divine power that soared up. He leaped and wielded Blood Mountain sword. Dang! 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 There was continuous clashing noises. Every single clash broke the void. Heaven and earth were engulfed in an extermination storm. The power dispersed after the 15 clashes while Jian Wushuang continued to stand erect in the extermination storm. Your skill with a knife is pretty good. It's a pity that you lack the strength. Jian Wushuang smiled. This boy. Real God Zhougong's face changed. His green god extermination, 15 continuous attacks of blade light, one was stronger than the other. When performed with full power, even the top 10 experts on the real god ranking list would find it difficult to withstand. However, Jian Wushuang took the attack so lightly and easily. Die! Another cold roar suddenly rang. The void behind Jian Wushuang was pierced all of a sudden. The entire heaven and earth instantly turned murky. Among the murky heaven and earth, a dim light suddenly flashed and flew past the void. Jian Wushuang stood there, and he could faintly hear tens of thousands of dragons roaring all together. At the same time, there was a terrifying chill. He was too lazy to even look to the back but slashed with his sword backhandedly. A simple stroke, but it contained the boundless divine power of an almighty. He pressed his opponent with pressure. Bong! There was a loud thud, and the universe resumed normalcy. The light grew dim, and real god Han Quan's body flew backwards. Such strong power! Real god Han Quan looked shocked as he bellowed, Zhougong, this boy is very strong, far stronger than us. But his comprehension of power of heaven isn't high. Don't compete in strength. Rely on techniques to kill him. Understand? Real god Zhougong's gaze grew cold, and the extermination aura rose again. The boundless extermination aura soared up and instantly formed a tens of thousands of zhang tall extermination beast in the void. The extermination beast roared and then opened its mouth. Pew! 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 One after another, extermination light shot towards Jian Wushuang. The extermination lights weren't exactly powerful, but they were extremely fast. The direction which the lights were shot into were cunningly tricky too. As for real god Zhougong himself, he turned into a cloud of fog and hovered away. Jian Wushuang gripped Blood Mountain's sword tightly with his right hand, while his left hand quivered and exploded with a fierce divine power. It instantly shattered the void before him, and the extermination lights that were aiming at him broke apart too. However, after they broke, the extermination beast that let out the lights instantly turned into a huge yet strange realm and expanded towards Jian Wushuang. Ha! Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. He realized that in this realm, his sight was greatly hindered. He could only see at most 10 miles surrounding him. Not only that, his soul power had been restricted in a similar fashion. Interesting, Jian Wushuang smiled. Virum! The void shook and a stream of darkness suddenly pounded him. Simultaneously, a blade light that contained boundless extermination power appeared next to Jian Wushuang out of nowhere and slammed at Jian Wushuang's head directly. Even Jian Wushuang was shocked by the sudden slash, but he managed to respond in time. He suddenly turned and wielded Blood Mountain sword. The sword instantly dispersed the incoming sword light. But then, at his surroundings, there were suddenly countless dim lights from all directions. Boundless starlight. Real god Han Quan clenched his teeth as he stabbed with his long spear. With that one stab, the countless dim lights surrounding Jian Wushuang flew towards him like lightning. What? Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. Even if it was him, he couldn't block so many dim lights at that moment. Bang! 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 There were whistles and explosions as Jian Wushuang was buried by the dim lights. A terrifying divine power swept across and the earth shook. Swoosh! Swoosh! The two figures plunged and stopped in the void. They were real god Zhougong and real god Han Quan. This boy should be dead, right? Real god Zhougong said in a cold voice. Definitely dead. My boundless starlight performed at such an environment earlier, it was impossible for him to block them. He is definitely dead. Real god Han Quan was confident. He made the two of us team up to perform our killer techniques. Jian Wushuang died with pride. Real God Jiugong sneered. Just as the smiles on their faces were beginning to spread, they stiffened again. In the divine power storm before them, there was a terrifying sword shadow that suddenly swept out to drive off the divine power storm. Then, a figure reappeared before everyone again. He held his sword with one hand. The crimson robe that he was wearing turned into crimson armor that covered his body. There were a dozen faint white traces on the crimson armor, which were left by attacks from spear shadows of the boundless starlight. Although there were a dozen white traces on the crimson armor, the aura on him wasn't worn out one bit. On the contrary, it became stronger. This, real God Jiugong stared. Didn't you say that this boy would definitely be dead? Why isn't he dead or his aura weakened? How is it possible? Real God Han Quan had a look of disbelief. He didn't know that Jian Wushuang was not only strong in divine power, but also his divine body. His divine power and divine body were at the level of an almighty. The earlier technique was meticulous, but the power was dispersed. Jian Wushuang was hit by the spear a dozen times, but the remaining power after being weakened by blood feather reincarnation armor wasn't enough to damage Jian Wushuang's divine body. You have displayed almost all of your techniques. It's my turn now. Now it's my turn. Jian Wushuang's indifferent laughter reverberated across the universe, and it caused many of the experts around the battlefield to be shocked. The expressions of real God Jiugong and real God Han Quan also became unusually grave. Before fighting with Jian Wushuang, they had never expected Jian Wushuang to be so strong. One of them was ranked 11th while the other was ranked 5th in the real God ranking list. Even with these two super experts teaming up and unleashing many moves, they were actually unable to do anything against him in the end. Just then, under their attention, Jian Wushuang raised the Blood Mountain sword in his hands high up in the air. At the moment where the Blood Mountain sword was raised, a shocking sword essence rose high up into the sky, and an infinite amount of divine power burst forth as well. In the void, which was in complete darkness, additional crimson sword shadows appeared out of thin air. Every sword crimson shadow was extremely big, and the power they emitted was so strong that it was shocking and suffocating. At the very least, all the experts around the area who were observing the battle felt extremely threatened by the crimson sword shadows. Just then, tens of crimson sword shadows had already formed in this piece of universe. One crimson sword shadow was already enough to make top chaotic real gods feel extremely threatened. What about tens of them? The experts observing the battle had finally finished counting. There was a total of 48 crimson sword shadows. This was due to the 7-star picture which Jian Wushuang had comprehended back then. Not only did his comprehension of his doctrine improve greatly, his understanding of sword principles had also achieved a whole new level. As such, when he had unleashed the myriad waves move, he was naturally able to create more crimson sword shadows. After a total of 48 sword shadows had formed, they fused together at a speed that naked eyes could perceive. In just a short period of time, a new crimson sword shadow appeared in the universe. In the whole universe, only that one sword shadow remained. However, after that sword shadow appeared, everyone present became terrified. Even when real God Jiugong and real God Han Quan saw the sword shadow, they also became extremely shocked. Even I am slightly fearful of this stroke. Han Quan, both of us have to be careful. Real God Jiugong said in a grave voice. I know. Real God Han Quan nodded his head earnestly. It is only possible to block this stroke if both of us team up. If it were 1 against 1, you will be fine as you are strong. As for me, even if I were to not die, at the very least, I would be fatally wounded. Let's do it. Real God Jiugong gave a shrill cry. After that, an unprecedented destructive aura appeared from his body instantly. Similarly, real God Han Quan looked ahead with wisdom. His body turned slightly scarlet in color, and a great amount of divine power burst forth. Divine light, great destruction. Real God Jiugong's body shook violently. By activating the destructive power, the thick and big saber on his hands expanded fiercely, and it covered half the void instantly. The big saber was covered in an infinite amount of destructive power, and it contained the ability to destroy everything. Kill! With a loud cry, the destructive edge of his saber, which had covered half the void, was swung out abruptly. As for real God Han Quan, he roared continuously, and the divine power in his body was inserted into the long spear in his hands endlessly. After that, shadows of ancient giant dragons appeared behind him out of thin air. By counting them, there were at least thousands of giant dragon shadows. The power of 1,000 dragons? Dragon Star Extermination! Real God Han Quan's eyes were glowing brilliantly. At that moment, the thousands of giant dragon shadows which had appeared behind him roared loudly at the same time. After that, they moved fiercely and entered the long spear in real God Han Quan's hands instantly. Filled with the power of 1,000 dragons, the frightening spear was swung out ferociously. All their powers were world-shaking. As for many of the experts who witnessed such a scene, all of them understood that real God Zhogong and real God Han Quan had unleashed their strongest moves. They had exerted all their strength. The crimson sword shadow created by Jian Wushuang's myriad waves. The destructive edge unleashed by real God Zhogong, as well as the strongest spear stroke which contained the power of 1,000 dragons of real God Han Quan. 3 earth-shaking attacks clashed head-on with one another in a split second. Boom! The heavens fell and the earth cracked. Frightening power burst forth as if it wanted to tear everything in the universe into pieces. For example, even though the experts who were observing the battle were very far away, they could still feel the unbelievable power from the battlefield. Those top chaotic real gods were clear that if that power were to touch them slightly, they would be doomed. For such an intense battle, only super experts who stood at the top of the pyramid had the right to participate in it. As for them, they could only observe such a soul-stirring battle from afar. Swoosh! Swoosh! All of a sudden, 2 rays of glittering lights were shot out from the universe-destroying storm. It was real God Zhogong and real God Han Quan. Present, both of their bodies looked a bit miserable. Real God Zhogong was in a mess and his face looked slightly pale. As for real God Han Quan, his situation was even worse. His face was as pale as paper and there was blood at the corners of his mouth. Moreover, the aura on his body was at least 30% weaker than before. It was obvious that his injuries were not light. Swoosh! 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 Soft sounds of feet stepping on the air could be heard. Real God Zhogong and real God Han Quan then raised their heads fiercely and looked forward. All of a sudden, a passage was created from within the divine power storm which was still moving madly, and a young figure walked out from it slowly. He was still carrying his sword with one hand and his aura was exceptionally strong like before. At the same time as he walked forward, a dull and slightly chilly voice could be heard in the piece of universe. Real God Zhogong, ranked 5th in the Real God ranking list. Real God Han Quan, ranked 11th in the Real God ranking list. I originally thought that with the both of you teaming up, both of you would be able to give me some fun. However, looking at it now, both of you are nothing much more than this. It was only after his words came out of his mouth that Jian Wushuang's face appeared in the line of vision of everyone again. Upon witnessing that, apart from the divine power storm which was still wreaking havoc, everything in the universe became silent. Complete silence. The eyes of real God Zhogong and real God Han Quan were filled with anger. However, their eyes were filled with even more fear. Even though they, 2 experts of the real God ranking list, had teamed up, they were still defeated in the end. They had lost to Jian Wushuang. With such abilities, both of you do not even have the right to get me to use my Hong Jun golden sword. Jian Wushuang shook his head and his body was filled with a murderous aura. I shall stop playing with the both of you. Accept your death. Jian Wushuang's eyes shone with a harsh light. After that, he raised his right hand slowly. On his right hand, frightening divine power had gathered on his index finger a long time ago. Ancient God's 6th finger, Sun Corrosion finger. Rumble, the universe collapsed and an ancient giant finger descended abruptly. The instant they saw the ancient giant finger, real God Zhogong's eyes shrank and all the hair on his body stood up. As for real God Han Quan, He opened his eyes wide and hopelessness appeared deep inside his eyes. The ancient finger descended. No matter if it was real God Zhogong or real God Han Quan, they couldn't withstand it. Just then, a dim light suddenly plunged over from the nearby void. The dim light brought about a strong power and collided with the ancient finger like lightning. Rumble. As heaven and earth quivered, the ancient finger that struck fear into every real god at the scene suddenly shattered into pieces. Ha! Jian Wushuang's gaze was fixed and looked in the direction that the dim light was shot. The experts hidden in the nearby void looked in the same direction simultaneously. In their sights, there was a gray-robed elderly that slowly appeared. The gray-robed elder with white hair and a ruddy complexion had a cold gaze that gave a dignified look. He appeared and there was a unique aura that spread around. Suddenly, he became the focus of the universe. Almighty! There were many experts that couldn't help but gasp in shock. From the unique aura and his action that broke the ancient finger that Jian Wushuang had used with a mere wave, the identity of the incomer was obvious. Looking at the incomer, real God Han Quan looked thrilled. He quickly greeted politely, "Sir God Qianlan." The gray-robed elderly nodded faintly as his figure moved over gradually. As he moved closer, Jian Wushuang's face grew solemn. Previously, no matter if it was real God Han Quan or real God Zhogong, he could deal with them easily and he couldn't be bothered. However, then it was a true almighty who came. The experts hidden nearby sighed in astonishment. No one had guessed that soaring Heaven King Palace would throw in so much this round. Not only did real God Han Quan teamed up with real God Zhogong, he had even sent an almighty to stay in the back. Almighty was a super-existence of eternal chaotic world. In the 10 sanctuaries, if any force were to have an almighty to back them up, they would definitely be the top force. Even in Sanctuary Alliance, they would take a proper place. Soaring Heaven King Palace had very few existences like that, but they had even sent an almighty to come over personally just to take care of Jian Wushuang. The gray-robed elderly Sir God Qianlan finally appeared on the battlefield. He stood next to real God Han Quan. Han Quan is useless. Send Sir God Qianlan and to take care of this personally, real God Han Quan said softly. He knew that soaring Heaven King Palace had not only sent him to team up with real God Zhogong to kill Jian Wushuang, they had also prepared a backup plan. However, he didn't know what the backup plan was. Until then, he had understood that the backup plan was Sir God Qianlan. "You can't be blamed for this," Sir God Qianlan replied. His voice was calm and there was no intention of reprimand. He had come to the void long ago, but he was hidden in the dark. If an almighty were to hide themselves intentionally, even Jian Wushuang's soul power wouldn't be able to probe to find him. Jian Wushuang naturally didn't notice his arrival. In the earlier scene where real God Han Quan and real God Zhogong had teamed up and fought against Jian Wushuang, he had watched clearly. He knew that it wasn't real God Han Quan and real God Zhogong being useless but Jian Wushuang being too powerful. From the power that Jian Wushuang had displayed earlier, his fighting power could totally be listed in the top 3 on Real God ranking list. Jian Wushuang. There was a cold voice and Sir God Qianlan's murky yet cold eyes glared at him. Simultaneously, there was a boundless power that instantly pressed towards Jian Wushuang. The power was extremely strong, but Jian Wushuang's face didn't change. "It seems that it is a great honor of mine. Real God Han Quan and Real God Zhogong, who rank among the top on Real God ranking list, teamed up. Now an almighty has come. Soaring Heaven King Palace looks highly upon me." Jian Wushuang chuckled. His laughter was obviously in disdain. Anyone at the scene could tell. "Humph, I didn't intend to come out. However, you are behaving too recklessly. You continuously kill chaotic real gods from Soaring Heaven King Palace. If we can't kill you, how can we stand on our feet in Sanctuary Alliance? So, even if I have to bear the bad name of bullying a young one, I will have to kill the outrageously arrogant man here." Sir God Qianlan's voice was loud and bright. He sounded so staunchly righteous. It was normal. An almighty was normally concerned with their names. Plus, between an almighty and a real god, the difference was too vast. Although Jian Wushuang was an inverse cultivator, he had yet to reach the level of a chaotic real god and he couldn't be compared to an almighty. If he who was an almighty were to take action at Jian Wushuang personally, he was obviously bullying the young one. It would definitely be embarrassing if it were to spread. Hence, Soaring Heaven King Palace had only sent real god Han Quan and real god Zhogong to kill Jian Wushuang at the beginning. But then, there was no alternative. So, he revealed himself. After all, him having his reputation damaged was better than the entire Soaring Heaven King Palace turning into a joke. Die, boy! Sir God Qianlan didn't bother to talk any more nonsense. He glared at Jian Wushuang coldly as though he was looking at a dead body. Just as he stopped speaking, rumble. Heaven and earth shook. Jian Wushuang's face grew dim, and he realized that the space surrounding him was shivering vigorously. Then, walala! Large chunks of yellowish-brown air current swept out and formed stormy seas that covered him from all directions. Jian Wushuang moved as he intended to dodge, but he realized that the yellowish-brown air current had engulfed the entire universe, and there was no way he could avoid it. Then, the yellowish-brown air current crushed him with the power of universe madly. From the view of the experts from the outside world, Jian Wushuang was drowned in a yellowish-brown prison. The prison was pressuring him savagely, and there was a constant explosion from within. Sir God Qianlan stood there coldly as his gaze was covered with a chilly gleam. As an almighty, his strength was not only in his divine power or divine body, it included his comprehension of power of Heaven Wei too. An almighty's comprehension of power of Heaven Wei could pass through level 7 of Doctrine Palace. He could easily kill any experts on Real God ranking list. It was also the difference between Almighty and Real God, a huge difference that couldn't be crossed. Just like his current technique, if he was fighting against Real God like Han Quan, he would have been dead long ago. However, Jian Wushuang was not someone Real God Han Quan could be compared to after all. Hong! With a vigorous explosion, the yellowish-brown prison that was continuously shrinking formed a hole out of nowhere. From the hole, there was a huge dark golden arm that extended. As the dark golden arm tore madly, the yellowish-brown prison was torn with a big hole. Crack! Crack! Cracks appeared all around the yellowish-brown prison continuously, and the yellowish-brown prison burst open completely in the end. After bursting open, a giant body appeared in the universe. He was more than 100 feet tall. He also had a total of 4 heads and 8 arms. Moreover, his body was covered with a dark golden light, and there were 6 stars in the space between his eyebrows. His power was shocking. It was Jian Wushuang who had revealed his ancient god body which had 4 heads and 8 arms. Eh? Sir God Qianlan looked at Jian Wushuang with surprise. Ancient god bloodline. Furthermore, it's the noble royal ancient god bloodline which is extremely rare. Looks like if I want to kill you, I will also need to use some other tricks. Sir God Qianlan's voice resounded across the universe, and a crimson long rod appeared on his hands. The long rod was emitting a scorching hot aura. The moment it appeared on Sir God Qianlan's hands, its heat melted the surrounding void straight away. Upon seeing the long rod, many experts who were hiding secretly were shocked. Although Sir God Qianlan had taken action as well, he only created a giant yellowish-brown prison to crush Jian Wushuang into pieces. However, at that moment he had taken out his own weapon. It was obvious that he was about to get serious. You can unleash whatever moves you have. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. 10 heaven incinerating colors? Red flame stroke. Sir God Qianlan swung the crimson long rod on his hands and countless crimson waves appeared on the void immediately. The crimson waves then swept through the area. After that, the crimson waves gathered in front of Sir God Qianlan. Rumble, a giant crimson red shadow, which was hundreds of feet wide, appeared out of thin air. In no time, the universe changed color and all beings trembled in fear. When the experts in the vicinity of the battlefield saw the giant crimson rod shadow, their hearts roared and their minds were about to be destroyed. The void was prodded through by the giant crimson rod shadow like paper paste. The giant crimson rod shadow then headed toward Jian Wushuang slowly with shocking power. Jian Wushuang's body shook violently as he had felt an unprecedented pressure at that moment. These are the abilities of an almighty? It's really powerful. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glowing brilliantly. To him, before he achieved Stage 2 Ultimate Real God, Almighties were existences who stood at the very top. He had also never seen Almighties fighting before. Present, it was his first time seeing it. Moreover, the person who the Almighty wanted to take care of was him. Although he was a bit surprised, Jian Wushuang was not afraid in the slightest bit. At that moment where the giant crimson rod shadow charged toward him, imposing divine power rose from his body. Ancient God's secret skill, thunder-attracting skill. His imposing divine power entered the void high up in the sky. Boom! All of a sudden, the surrounding black universe shook. After that, a giant crack appeared on the highest heavens. The crack split the universe into two halves and crimson life-destroying sacred thunders gathered in the crack. After that, the life-destroying sacred thunder descended. Rumble. There was a total of 9 life-destroying sacred thunders. Every one of them was as wide as a mountain, and all of them struck the top crimson rod shadow at the same time. Clump. Rustle. The heaven fell and the earth cracked. The ground below Jian Wushuang and Sir God Qianlan sunk down straight away by hundreds of meters, and a giant hole was created. At the void, the frightening power of the divine power was wreaking havoc and destroying everything. It was just like the end of the world. Swoosh! A figure was sent flying out of the divine power storm, which was wreaking havoc. It was Jian Wushuang. The body of Jian Wushuang then was a bit miserable. However, the aura in his body was still thick and in a great amount. As for Sir God Qianlan, he still assumed an air of superiority. Although the 9 life-destroying sacred thunders that Jian Wushuang had attracted had shocking power such that they could tear the crimson rod shadow that he had unleashed into pieces, the divine power that was dispersed did not spread onto his body. Jian Wushuang, I did not expect your divine power to actually be so strong. Sir God Qianlan's eyes were filled with shrill light, and he stared at Jian Wushuang. Looking at your aura, you are merely an eternal real God. However, looking purely at your divine power, you are actually not a lot weaker than me. An inverse cultivator is indeed frightening. Haha. As expected of an almighty, your moves are indeed impressive. It's much more interesting to fight with you compared to real God Zhogong and real God Han Quan. Jian Wushuang laughed. Moreover, your abilities have the right to get me to use the Hong Jun Golden Sword. Hong Jun Golden Sword? Sir God Qianlan was puzzled. Jian Wushuang did not give any explanation. With a wave of his hands, a 4-foot-long, extremely unusual sword-type weapon with blades on both ends appeared beside Jian Wushuang. This sword-type weapon was gold in color, and it was floating quietly in its position. It was the Hong Jun Golden Sword. The Hong Jun Golden Sword was a valuable treasure that relied mainly on the power of spacetime and was controlled by soul power. During the period of time where Jian Wushuang had stayed in the standalone space of Dark Region, he had been studying the Hong Jun Golden Sword intensively with great effort. Hence, he was certain about its power as well as how strong it was. To date, during the clash with the soaring Heaven King Palace, although he had already experienced many great battles, no one had managed to force him to use the Hong Jun Golden Sword. For example, when real God Zhogong and real God Han Quan teamed up, they still did not have the right to get him to use this trump card. It was only then that Jian Wushuang took out this trump card for real. Previously, although I used the Hong Jun Golden Sword to massacre quite a number of star demons for practice, this is the first time that I have used the Hong Jun Golden Sword to fight an intense battle with a human cultivator. Moreover, my opponent is an almighty. Jian Wushuang was licking his lips. His eyes were also glowing with a strange light, and at the next moment, he activated his power of spacetime. The Hong Jun Golden Sword, which had been floating quietly on the void, shook slightly. After that, whoosh! A ray of golden light was shot out abruptly. Although the golden light had only just lit up, it had already covered a great distance and appeared in front of Sir God Qianlan. Even if it were an almighty like Sir God Qianlan, when he saw the ray of golden light which had appeared abruptly, he was caught unprepared. However, he still swung the crimson long rod in his hands immediately. Swish! A crimson rod shadow attacked from the void. When the two attacks clashed head-on, an unreasonable amount of power burst forth at the same time. Eh? Sir God Qianlan's expression changed slightly. He could sense a great amount of power in the attack. Even if it were him with such a great amount of power, He also could not help but retreat 2 steps back. The ray of golden light was also sent flying by him. However, after the ray of golden light regained its posture, it swept past the void strangely and appeared beside Sir God Qianlan immediately. This speed! Sir God Qianlan finally revealed a shocked expression. The speed of the ray of golden light was too fast and strange. Even though Sir God Qianlan had only just regained his posture, the ray of golden light had already headed toward him. Bang! 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 There were golden lights that flashed past, one after another. Every single flash aimed towards Sir God Qianlan. Every single hit that contained fierce power that pushed Sir God Qianlan backwards. In Sir God Qianlan's eyes, there was a chilly gleam. He constantly wanted to shake off or break apart the golden light. However, the speed of the golden light was too fast. Hong Jun Golden Sword focused on space-time power. The scariest aspect of it was its speed and flexibility. The Hong Jun Golden Sword took the form of golden light and plunged into the void, just like space-time's spoilt child that couldn't be contained by space-time power. It hit Sir God Qianlan and made him fall back from the impact. Then immediately it hit him again the second time. It didn't give him any chance to prepare for a counterattack. Sir God Qianlan was an almighty. He had many tricks, but he had no chance to perform them at all under the continuous hits of the golden light. He was retreating from the continuous force of the golden light. Bastard, what is this? Hong Jun Golden Sword flew and hit Sir God Qianlan over and over again. He felt aggrieved and the rage was soaring in his eyes. Too fast and too creepy, and it keeps coming. Unless I take one hit directly, I'll have a chance to counterattack. But the power of golden light isn't weak. After one hit, I'll definitely be severely injured. This Jian Wushuang, I wonder where he learnt such a superior skill. Sir God Qianlan was thinking to himself, and he couldn't help but look at Jian Wushuang. To take one hit of Hong Jun Golden Sword was a huge price to pay. But if he didn't do so, he could only be suppressed by Hong Jun Golden Sword. Of course, there was also another possibility. He could move closer to Jian Wushuang as he was suppressed, then fight in close combat with Jian Wushuang so he couldn't control the Hong Jun Golden Sword. Speaking of close combat, he gave up after he saw Jian Wushuang's 4 heads and 8 arms ancient god body. In Eternal Chaotic World, who didn't know that ancient god tribe was the strongest in close combat? If he were to fight in close combat with an ancient god, he would simply be courting death. Hong Jun Golden Sword continued to hit and Sir God Qianlan was at the state where he was suppressed and couldn't counterattack. Looking at the scene, Jian Wushuang lifted the corners of his lips and smirked coldly. With the Hong Jun Golden Sword that I performed with my all, I held Sir God Qianlan back with just one sword, but I could only hold him back. Jian Wushuang was aware that Almighties were the strongest bunch of experts in Eternal Chaotic World, and all of them were impressive. Their defense power was terrifyingly strong too. Sir God Qianlan was just hesitating about if he wanted to go all out. Once he opted to, Jian Wushuang wouldn't be at ease. As for killing Sir God Qianlan, it was an extravagant hope with Jian Wushuang's current power. Although I can't kill him, I can teach him a lesson. Jian Wushuang's gaze fixed. He drove Hong Jun Golden Sword with his soul power and continued to attack Sir God Qianlan. As he pressured him, there was billowing divine power and ancient god power soaring from his body. Rumble. His billowing divine power. After a few repeated battles, Jian Wushuang expanded quite a lot of divine power. Then, he spent another 20% of his divine power. He expanded 20% of his divine power in order to perform the technique. The technique was the strongest technique of ancient god tribe. Secret skill of ancient god moon-picking skill. There was a glimpse of light that burst from Jian Wushuang's eyes. Then, the billowing divine power suddenly swept out. Virum. The void quivered. Sir God Qianlan, who was still blocking the attack of Hong Jun Golden Sword, his face changed. He could clearly feel unique energy in the void around him. Suddenly, walala. The void surrounding him instantly shattered. The power spread towards him and it made him shiver. He looked terrified too. At that moment, he felt that the entirety of heaven and earth, including the entirety of space-time, was pressing towards him and was going to crush him into pieces. It was too powerful and it was too strange. It was as though he was being repelled by heaven and earth. It was as though he shouldn't exist in the world. My body, I can't move it? Sir God Qianlan looked surprised. Yes, he couldn't move. No matter how he struggled, how he triggered his divine power, he couldn't move. He could only quiver slightly at the most. The repellent power of the spacetime pressed over him and he could only withstand it bluntly. Moon-picking skill was the only secret skill of ancient god that involved spacetime, and it was also rather magical. If the secret skill were to explode its extreme power, it could repel and break a person away from the spacetime. Then, it could drive the spacetime power of the entire heaven and earth to crush him into dust. Jian Wushuang had just mastered the secret skill at a beginner level. He wasn't good at it and he couldn't give full play to the power of the secret skill. Even so, the secret skill that he had performed could still pose a great threat against Sir God Qianlan. Pst, pst, pst. There was a low divine power crushing sound that made Sir God Qianlan in the void grew pale. After quite some time, the pressing spacetime power calmed down and his figure became movable again. Swoosh! A creepy golden light lit up again. It maintained a fast speed and was unpredictable in action. Sir God Qianlan couldn't block it in time. Hong Jun golden sword was like a sharp, golden all that hit Sir God Qianlan's body brutally. Sir God Qianlan, who was an almighty, had a strong divine body and had cultivated a secret skill of defense. He was also wearing armor. His defensive power was terrifyingly strong. However, as Hong Yung golden sword hit him, he spat a mouthful of blood and his aura instantly dropped. The experts surrounding the battlefield saw the scene and everyone was dumbfounded. Injured? Sir God Qianlan is injured. An almighty against a real god. And the almighty is severely injured. Forget about the fact that real god Zhogong and real god Han Quan were defeated previously. They were only real gods after all. But Sir God Qianlan was a true almighty. Jian Wushuang injured an almighty. Unbelievable. Everyone found it unbelievable. Real god Han Quan, who was watching the battle at the border of the battlefield, was staring with his eyes wide open. Real god Han Quan didn't notice that Jian Wushuang, who had just performed moon-picking skill in collaboration of Hong Jun golden sword to injure Sir God Qianlan, was looking at him with his pair of cold eyes. The lesson has been taught. Next, there was a chilly gleam in his eyes, just as everyone was in a state of surprise. Swoosh! Jian Wushuang created countless shadows instantly. At the same time as his body moved, the Hong Jun golden sword shook slightly and changed its direction toward Jian Wushuang. As for Jian Wushuang's target, it was real god Han Quan of the Soaring Heaven King Palace. Not good. It was obvious that real god Han Quan had realized Jian Wushuang's intention as well. His expression then changed greatly at once and he did his best to escape. However, he had been staying at the edge of the battlefield and he was not that far away from Jian Wushuang to begin with. Moreover, after Jian Wushuang wounded Sir God Qianlan fatally, which caused everyone to be in a state of shock, he attacked him without any warning. In addition, his speed was extremely fast and when real god Han Quan reacted, it was already too late. The ray of golden light which was dragging its long tail like a comet appeared in front of real god Han Quan instantly and attacked him right away. Real god Han Quan swung the long spear in his hands immediately to block the attack. However, in the end, with just one attack, bam! The long spear in real god Han Quan's hands was sent flying at once, and the ray of golden light continued piercing real god Han Quan's body without any decrease in power. Puff! Real god Han Quan spit out a huge mouthful of blood again. His expression, which was already pale to begin with, became deathly pale like paper. His aura also plunged to rock bottom. As for Jian Wushuang, his body had already appeared in front of real god Han Quan, and he swung the Blood Mountain sword in his hands fiercely. Although he swung a long sword, the Blood Mountain sword turned into a vast and lofty mountain in the next moment. The bottom of the lofty mountain then released many marvelous secret patterns and they covered real god Han Quan completely. After that, the secret patterns threw real god Han Quan, who was struggling madly, into the mountain. After finishing that, The lofty mountain changed into a long sword again and appeared in Jian Wushuang's hands. While holding the Blood Mountain sword tightly, Jian Wushuang shot a glance toward real God Jiugong, the purple-robed old man, who was already far away and was escaping crazily. "This real God Jiugong is indeed very cunning," Jian Wushuang murmured. Originally, Jian Wushuang had planned to kill real God Jiugong straight away and then suppress real God Han Quan. However, real God Jiugong was very intelligent. When Sir God Qianlan appeared on the battlefield, he ran away to a distant void, and he was not like real God Han Quan, who stayed at the edge of the battlefield, as he was extremely confident in Sir God Qianlan. In the end, Jian Wushuang took action abruptly, and real God Han Quan was suppressed by him as he could not escape in time. As for real God Jiugong, Jian Wushuang had no way to deal with him again. However, even if real God Jiugong were unable to escape in time, it would probably not be that easy for me to kill him, Jian Wushuang muttered. Real God Jiugong was ranked 5th in the real God ranking list. He was not just strong in terms of abilities. Instead, he was also strong in terms of his many techniques, and in particular, his techniques to stay alive. It should be known that even the lineage of Star was unable to do anything against him. It was said that even the Star Palace Master of the lineage of Star had gone after him personally before. However, he had still managed to escape. Although Jian Wushuang had injured Sir God Qianlan seriously, he would not be that arrogant and think that he was stronger than the Star Palace Master. Jian Wushuang. All of a sudden, a voice which was filled with an infinite amount of anger could be heard, and even the whole universe became filled with an unlimited amount of anger. At that moment, Sir God Qianlan's hair and mustache were blown up. His body was also emitting an extremely frightening aura which caused everyone to be terrified. In addition, his eyes were scarlet in color, like a demon's. As for the experts who hid themselves near the void, even though they were far away, they could still feel the shocking anger from Sir God Qianlan. Why? Could it be that Sir God Qianlan still wishes to fight with me? Jian Wushuang laughed coldly. The Hongjun golden sword which was floating quietly beside him shook abruptly, and it looked as if it could change into a ray of golden light again any time to attack. After Sir God Qianlan glanced at Jian Wushuang, an unusual light flashed in his eyes and his expression turned gloomy like water. "Release Han Quan. If not, the Soaring Heaven King Palace will fight with you to our last gasp." Haha, what a joke. Could it be that the Soaring Heaven King Palace and I are not already fighting to our last gasp now? Jian Wushuang sneered wantonly. Since we have already fought to this extent, there is nothing for me to fear. Jian Wushuang's words had caused the hidden experts to nod their heads in agreement. Indeed, since Jian Wushuang and the Soaring Heaven King Palace had fought to such an extent, it had been considered a fight to their last gasp a long time ago. At that moment, Sir God Qianlan still used fighting to their last gasp to threaten Jian Wushuang. However, his words were totally meaningless. Jian Wushuang, looks like you really want to start a huge battle between the Soaring Heaven King Palace and the lineage of Star. Sir God Qianlan's voice was gloomy and cold. A great battle between two top powerhouses will involve many things. Hence, I advise you to think thoroughly. Even if you are not thinking for yourself, you have to think of the lineage of Star which is behind you. A great battle? Sir God Qianlan, don't use a great battle to frighten me. Even if we were to go into a great battle, what about it? The Soaring Heaven King Palace is indeed strong. However, do you think that the lineage of Star is afraid of them? Jian Wushuang's eyes were icy cold. When he had clashed with the Soaring Heaven King Palace head-on, he had already checked with Hall Master Yuan. Hall Master Yuan also told him before that he could just go for it and not be worried about anything. With the lineage of Star as well as the Palace Master present, even the heavens would not collapse. Hall Master Yuan's words had caused Jian Wushuang to be extremely confident, and he did not have any more worries. Moreover, even if a great battle were to occur, it would not be caused by me. Instead, it would be caused by the Soaring Heaven King Palace. Jian Wushuang bellowed. Damn it! You have killed quite a number of the Soaring Heaven King Palace's chaotic real gods in succession, and you still dare to say that the great battle is started by the Soaring Heaven King Palace. Sir God Qianlan became furious at once. Humph! I killed them as they deserved to die. Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold and gloomy. After that, he waved his big hands and a video appeared in the void immediately. In the video there were two people. One of them was Jian Wushuang, while the other person was real God Ziyi, who had already died. In the video, both of them were standing opposite each other with a huge distance between them. The conversation that they were having also could be heard across the universe. During the conversation, it was obviously mentioned that at the very start, as real God Guing had cast his greedy eyes on Jian Wushuang's grade 3 demon core, he had taken the initiative to snatch it from Jian Wushuang. As for Jian Wushuang, he had killed real God Guing in order to protect himself. Even real God Ziyi himself admitted to it. Moreover, real God Ziyi even said in the end, "No matter what the reason is, as long as you kill the soaring Heaven King Palace's people, you must die." After that, both of them started to fight. When the video came to an end, the truth was exposed in front of everyone. As for the experts who were hidden at the void nearby, all of them saw it and heard it clearly. "Sir God Qianlan, do you have anything left to say now?" Jian Wushuang's cry reverberated across the universe. The video was made back then when Jian Wushuang had intentionally led real God Ziyi to do what he did. Back then, he had thought that such a situation would occur in the future. Hence, he was prepared for it and he had recorded the video. With the video present, at the very least, the reasoning was on Jian Wushuang's side. In this world, although the strong are victorious and fists represent everything, when both parties are evenly matched and no one can do anything to the other, reasoning becomes very important. Jian Wushuang was smiling coldly in his heart. The moment the image played, the experts hidden in the nearby void gasped in surprise. "I see, that's what happened. Because he cast greedy eyes over Jian Wushuang's treasure, he was killed. Could only be said that he wasn't powerful enough. He can't blame anyone else." But Soaring Heaven King Palace intentionally sent experts to go after Jian Wushuang, which led to what happened today. At first, Soaring Heaven King Palace said that it was Jian Wushuang who coveted real God Gu Ying's treasure and killed real God Gu Ying. They are so shameless. Not only are they shameless, they are barbaric. Regardless of the reason, as long as one kills people from Soaring Heaven King Palace, they must die. Humph! Soaring Heaven King Palace is full of themselves. They considered various forces beneath them. The experts sighed emotionally. Although no one would get involved, the experts had already taken Jian Wushuang's side from the bottom of their hearts. The incident had obviously happened because Soaring Heaven King Palace was too arrogant and shameless. Since the beginning, Jian Wushuang had only been counterattacking in a passive manner. Sir God Qianlan's face grew grave. He had never thought that Jian Wushuang would keep a trump card on hand. The moment the image was shown, Soaring Heaven King Palace was destined to be embarrassed. Sir God Qianlan took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in him. He looked at Jian Wushuang. "Young man, you should know real God Han Quan's importance to Soaring Heaven King Palace." "I know, of course I know." Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Real God Han Quan was the #1 real God in Soaring Heaven King Palace. He was in the 11th place on Real God ranking list. Plus, he was truly a genius. He didn't take a long time to grow to his current stage and he was full of potential. Although he wasn't like Jian Wushuang, he stood a great chance to break through and become an almighty. Such a genius was of course unusually important to Soaring Heaven King Palace. "Tell me, what do you want us to do for you to release Han Quan?" Sir God Qianlan's voice was low. He had no choice. If Jian Wushuang were to just be an ordinary chaotic real god, or even just an expert on real god ranking list, he would not hesitate to kill Jian Wushuang. But the crucial thing was that the power that Jian Wushuang had displayed was not any weaker than his. Even during the earlier fight, he had had the lower hand. With such power, he couldn't kill Jian Wushuang at all. He could only suppress his anger and murderous intention. "Sir God Qianlan, if you said so, let's talk about terms." Jian Wushuang smiled. The scene before his eyes was within his expectations. Actually, with his power, he could totally kill real God Han Quan straight away, but he didn't. He only held him back using Blood Mountain Sword. Jian Wushuang did so, of course, with something in mind. To him, it didn't matter to kill real God Han Quan or not. After all, real God Han Quan couldn't pose a threat to him, but he wanted to utilize real god Han Quan to bring himself some benefit. At the same time, he could also make soaring heaving King Palace's heart ache. You want me to release real god Han Quan? Soaring Heaven King Palace has to fulfill 3 conditions, Jian Wushuang said coldly. 3 conditions? Sir God Qianlan pressed down the anger in him. Say them. Firstly, I need some doctrine gems. As for the amount, not much, just 100,000 doctrine gems. Jian Wushuang smiled. Phew! In the void, there were gasps of surprise. Jian Wushuang shook everyone as he spoke. 100,000 doctrine gem? One should know that an ordinary chaotic real god's possession would most likely be around 1 to 200 doctrine gems, while a top chaotic real god would be decent enough to have 1,000 doctrine gems. 100,000 doctrine gems would require 100 top chaotic real god to make up the sum. To any ordinary real god, the amount was beyond imagination. All right, I promise you that. Sir God Qianlan's face remained unchanged. 100,000 doctrine gem was naturally an astronomical figure to a real god. However, to an almighty it wasn't much. To soaring Heaven King Palace, which was a great force, it was nothing. Secondly, I need some demon cores. It's best if they are grade 3 and above. As for the amount, the ordinary black grade 3 demon cores, 1,000 of them. Green grade 3 demon cores, 100. Crimson grade 3 demon cores. Slightly less, about 10 will do. Jian Wushuang replied with a smile. The experts hidden in the void heard that and everyone was staring. Demon cores were something that only the 8 layers had. They could only be obtained by hunting star demons. The demon cores that Jian Wushuang asked for, even if they killed 1/10 of the star demons in the 8th layer, they probably couldn't gather the number. All right? Sir God Qianlan's corners of his lips quivered. If an almighty was willing to head to the 7th layer or the 6th layer to wander and massacre star demons, he almost wouldn't come across anything threatening as long he didn't enter the dark region. He should be able to gather the demon cores after a few thousand years. To soaring Heaven King Palace, it could be accepted. The last condition, you know that I am cultivating on Thunderbolt Island and I have the token of the Fairy Palace's legacy. But it's a pity that the cultivation time on my token of the Fairy Palace's legacy isn't much left. So, I'd like to get some from soaring Heaven King Palace. Not many, just 500 years will do. Jian Wushuang smiled. Dream on. This time, Sir God Qianlan couldn't hold back anymore but roared with anger. If he wasn't bothered about Jian Wushuang's power, he would have cut him into 8 big pieces long ago. The experts hidden were shocked too. They could tell that Jian Wushuang was demanding an exorbitant price. The token of the Fairy Palace's legacy was different from Doctrine Gem and Demon Cores. It wasn't something that you could have if you wanted. Sanctuary Alliance distributed the tokens of the Fairy Palace's legacy every 300,000 years. Although soaring Heaven King Palace was the top force, they only received 2 every 300,000 years. Every time they received the tokens, they would immediately give them to geniuses under their command. It could be said that the token of the Fairy Palace's legacy was extremely precious to soaring Heaven King Palace. But then, Jian Wushuang was asking for 500 years of cultivation time in Fairy Palace. It equaled 5 tokens of the Fairy Palace's legacy. Sir God Qianlan, don't be angry just yet. Although 500 years of cultivation time in Fairy Palace is precious, it couldn't be compared to a genius who could break through and become an almighty, right? Jian Wushuang smiled. How about this? You can return to discuss with your palace master and higher-ups in Soaring Heaven King Place. Come and look for me when you have made a decision. I'll give you 100 years' time to discuss. For the next 100 years, I will stay in the Thunderbolt Island. If your side were to agree to my conditions, we will do the trade in the Thunderbolt Island. If your side were to not give me an answer after 100 years, then this genius of yours will be gone. Sir God Qianlan, go back and think carefully. I shall take my leave now. Jian Wushuang's hearty voice resounded across the universe. After that, his body moved and he left in front of Sir God Qianlan. Sir God Qianlan looked on as Jian Wushuang left and he had no intention of stopping him. He had no choice. Even if he wanted to stop him, he could not do so. In order to take care of Jian Wushuang this time around, the Soaring Heaven King Palace had sent out a powerful lineup. Even though an almighty like him had shown up personally, they were still unable to do anything to Jian Wushuang. Hence, even if the Soaring Heaven King Palace wished to hire other almighties with stronger abilities to kill Jian Wushuang, it would definitely be too late. This time around, the Soaring Heaven King Palace had suffered an unexpected failure. Sir God Qianlan clenched both his fists tightly. However, he was filled with helplessness. The Sanctuary Alliance, powerhouses from everywhere, as well as many experts who traveled alone, were all waiting in anticipation for the Soaring Heaven King Palace and the lineage of Star to clash head-on with one another. In particular, when they knew that Jian Wushuang's abilities had risen greatly and that he had killed 9 top chaotic real gods in one go, they had become even more interested. All of them were waiting eagerly for the news. In no time, news started to spread. Firstly, it was real god Han Quan and real god Zhougong arriving at the same time and then teaming up to kill Jian Wushuang. In the end, they were defeated by Jian Wushuang. After that, Sir God Qianlan, one of the almighties of the Soaring Heaven King Palace, appeared personally and fought an intense battle with Jian Wushuang head-on. In the end, he was fatally wounded by Jian Wushuang, and real god Han Quan was also suppressed by Jian Wushuang right away. At the very end, Sir God Qianlan discussed some terms with Jian Wushuang as he had no choice. Jian Wushuang had then made exorbitant demands by bringing up conditions that were completely unacceptable. After that news was made public, the whole Sanctuary Alliance was in an uproar. They were also in shock and disbelief. Almost everyone had thought that the Soaring Heaven King Palace and the lineage of Star would clash head-on this time around. Moreover, Jian Wushuang would no doubt be the main character of this matter. Moreover, there were also people who pitted Jian Wushuang all the while. However, what happened in the end? From the start to the end, no one from the lineage of Star showed up. It was only Jian Wushuang himself. Just by himself, he had single-handedly made the powerful lineup that was sent out by the Soaring Heaven King Palace, including the Almighty Helpless. On the contrary, they had suffered huge losses in Jian Wushuang's hands. In no time, countless people were shocked by this matter. That Jian Wushuang is merely an eternal real god. However, he is still able to fight with an almighty head-on and even wound him fatally. This is really unbelievable. Too frightening. This Jian Wushuang is too frightening. If we purely use words like genius and demon to describe him, he would still be indescribable. After all, even demons and monsters are not as frightening as him. Inverse cultivator. This is an inverse cultivator. Many experts in the Sanctuary Alliance knew how shocking Jian Wushuang's speed of emergence was. It should be known that more than 20,000 years ago, when Wu Bei's cave appeared, the Jian Wushuang then was only a universe god. Hence, he was just a little kid. However, in a short 20,000 years, he had become an overlord. That's right, he had become an overlord. His current abilities had already achieved the level of an almighty, and in the eternal chaotic world, almighties were considered overlords. Of course, at the same time that everyone was shocked about Jian Wushuang's abilities, all the powerhouses as well as experts who traveled alone within the Sanctuary Alliance were laughing at the Soaring Heaven King Palace. The Soaring Heaven King Palace had always been unreasonable. Moreover, many powerhouses and experts had developed a grudge against the Soaring Heaven King Palace before. However, due to the Soaring Heaven King Palace's abilities, they only dared to be furious but did not say anything. However, this time round, the Soaring Heaven King Palace had completely thrown their reputation away. They had thrown so much of their reputation away that they had been reduced to a joke. They had sent out such a powerful lineup. There were tens of chaotic real gods, which included real god Han Quan and real god Zhougong, who were experts at the front of the real god ranking list. Moreover, even an almighty had come personally. However, their aim was merely to kill a real god. The real god had almost no help from anyone, and he relied purely on himself. In the end, he slaughtered the Soaring Heaven King Palace to the point that they were in a hideous mess and were too tragic to look at. Thus, what else could they be besides a joke? Moreover, the Soaring Heaven King Palace themselves had asked for the joke. Jian Wushuang had made the video of the conversation between him and real god Ziyi public. It was obvious that the Soaring Heaven King Palace had always been the one making trouble, and Jian Wushuang had merely retaliated all the way in order to protect himself. Furthermore, for the great battle this time round, in order to show their power, the soaring Heaven King Palace had taken the initiative to spread the news. As such, it had resulted in such a huge commotion. At that moment, they were defeated and had lost their reputation. Apart from blaming themselves, they could not blame anyone else. In addition, even though the soaring Heaven King Palace had thrown their reputation away, they had still not completely thrown all their face away. After all, real God Han Quan was still in Jian Wushuang's hands, and the conditions that Jian Wushuang had brought up were made public as well. At that moment, everyone was excited as to how the soaring Heaven King Palace would respond. Would they agree or reject his conditions? The soaring Heaven King Palace then had an extremely gloomy atmosphere. Many higher-ups of the soaring Heaven King Palace were naturally enraged. However, they could only be enraged. Such a matter had already occurred, and their reputation had been totally thrown away. They even had no way to find trouble with the lineage of Star. After all, for this matter, they were in the wrong. Currently, what they needed to do was to do their best to reduce the losses of the soaring Heaven King Palace. For their losses, the first thing to do was naturally to bring real God Han Quan back. Not long after Jian Wushuang had returned to the Thunderbolt Island, the soaring Heaven King Palace sent a message to him saying that they accepted the 3 conditions that he had brought up. At a spacious ground in the Thunderbolt Island, the open area did not have any opportunities. Moreover, on normal days, no one would stay in this open area. However, at present, innumerous experts had come to this open area. In the whole of Thunderbolt Island, apart from some experts who were completely immersed in the comprehension of the opportunities, more than 90% of the experts had come to the open area. This included a few interested almighties who had appeared in the void near the open area. This was because on the very day, the soaring Heaven King Palace would complete their trade with Jian Wushuang on the open area. At the middle of the open space, the soaring Heaven King Palace had tens of experts on their side, and Sir God Chen Lian had also appeared personally, just like before. As for Jian Wushuang, he was also accompanied by some experts from the lineage of Star. These are the doctrine gems and demon cores that you wanted. In addition, there are also 2 tokens of the Fairy Palace's legacy, and each of them contains 250 years of training time. Please do a check yourself. Sir God Chen Lan's expression was ice-cold, and he took out a Qian Kuan ring. Jian Wushuang took the Qian Kuan ring. After using his soul power to scan it, he smiled and nodded his head. After that, he waved his hands and released real God Han Quan, who had been suppressed in the Blood Mountain sword. Sir God Chen Lan, this is a good trade. Jian Wushuang laughed heartily. Humph, don't be arrogant. The soaring Heaven King Palace will not let this matter go just like that. Sir God Chen Lan said in a cold voice. I will be waiting. Jian Wushuang was still laughing like before. The curtain descended for the highly anticipated battle between soaring Heaven King Palace and lineage of Star after the deal on Thunderbolt Island. In the battle, not only did soaring Heaven King Palace suffer heavy losses, they became a laughingstock. As for Jian Wushuang, he had gained a complete victory, especially the 100,000 doctrine gems, demons' cores, and 500 years of cultivation time in Fairy Palace. Everyone was envious. On Thunderbolt Island, Jian Wushuang gathered with many real gods of lineage of Star. Real God Duan Yen, real God Huan Yu, thank you for your help in the 8th lair. This small gift is just a token of gratitude, of my respect. Jian Wushuang took out 2 Qian Kuan rings. This? Real God Duan Yen creased his eyebrows. He hesitated because the 2 of them actually hadn't helped much during the battle. Jian Wushuang had defeated soaring Heaven King Palace alone. As Jian Wushuang has offered it, we shall accept it. After all, he received quite an abundant reward from soaring Heaven King Palace. Real God Huan Yu accepted it straight away. That's true. Real God Duan Yen beamed with joy and accepted it as well. Everyone else too. Jian Wushuang took out some other Qian Kuan rings for every expert from lineage of Star. The benefits that he had gotten from soaring Heaven King Palace were shockingly great. It was only right and proper that he shared some with the experts in lineage of Star. After all, when he was in the dark region, the experts in lineage of Star had helped to look for him. Everyone took the Qian Kuan rings and skimmed through with their consciousness. They were all surprised. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang's small gift was priceless. After everyone had left, Jian Wushuang took out a communication token to contact Hall Master Yuan. How did it go? Hall Master Yuan had sent a message long ago. It went well. Soaring Heaven King Palace gave me the things. Jian Wushuang smiled. I knew it. Hall Master Yuan wasn't surprised. Although the things that you asked for are priceless, they are nothing to real God Han Quan. Plus, there are so many people who knew that you imprisoned real God Han Quan. If Soaring Heaven King Palace were to not take out those things willingly, the experts under their command would definitely be discouragingly disappointed. True. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. This time you have gained abundantly. But, honestly speaking, it was too risky. Luckily, everything went well. Otherwise, Hall Master Yuan sighed. I never thought Soaring Heaven King Palace would want me dead so badly. To fight me, just a real god, they even sent an almighty. They are very cruel, Jian Wushuang said. Soaring Heaven King Palace did overdo it this time. It is a little unusual, Hall Master Yuan said. Then he shook his head. Don't bother with them. You only need to be careful with Soaring Heaven King Palace in the future. Oh yeah, Real God ranking list has been updated. You haven't seen it yet, right? They changed it so quickly? Jian Wushuang was shocked. It was supposed to be changed after a while, but because of you, Vientiane Tower changed it ahead of time. After all, your sudden rise caused a great impact to Real God ranking list. Hall Master Yuan paused and continued. Do you know which rank you are at on the new Real God ranking list? Should be in the top 3, I'm guessing. Jian Wushuang smiled. You're in top 3 and in the first place, Hall Master Yuan said. The first place on Real God ranking list? Jian Wushuang was surprised. He knew that he would definitely be in the top 3 and he definitely could be in second place if not mistaken. However, he had never thought of being the first place on Real God ranking list. After all, he had seen Real God ranking list and he also knew the fighting results of the first place on Real God ranking list. Although he had had great results during his visit to the 8th lair and he had even injured Sir God Qianlan, it was because he had used many trump cards and Sir God Qianlan hadn't managed to perform any techniques in time. However, it didn't mean he was stronger than Sir God Qianlan. On the contrary, if they were to fight with their all, Sir God Qianlan might possibly have the upper hand. As for the previous first placed on Real God ranking list, it was in a situation where both parties were giving their all. He had suppressed an almighty. In terms of fighting results, he was stronger by 1 notch than Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang didn't think that he could move to the top of Real God ranking list, but in the end, he was wrong. Between Real God and Almighty, the difference is vast. There are many experts on Real God ranking list, but who could be evenly matched with an Almighty besides Real God Fa Mie, who was in the first place previously? He fought against an Almighty before. In terms of fighting result, he isn't weaker than you. But Vientiane Tower listed you in the first place before Real God Fa Mie due to your potential. Hall Master Yuan smiled. Real God Fa Pi became chaotic Real God for very long. His power has reached a bottleneck. Unless he becomes an almighty, it is impossible for him to increase his power. On the other hand, you are different. You are an inverse cultivator and your potential is much higher than Real God Fa Mie's. Your space to grow on the stage as Real God is still terrifying huge. Forget about the rest. As soon as you break through and become chaotic Real God, it will be an easy task to win against Fa Mie. I see. Jian Wushuang understood. First place on Real God ranking list. Not long ago, he was in the first place on Universe God ranking list. Then, he had suddenly risen abruptly to a brand new level with such short notice. With the encounter of first place on Universe God ranking list, Jian Wushuang didn't feel anything about being the first place of Real God ranking list. An inverse cultivator isn't someone an ordinary cultivator could compare to. Any inverse cultivator, no matter how low his comprehension of power of Heaven Wei is, as long as he reaches the level of Stage 3 Ultimate Real God, the level of a chaotic Real God, he could easily become the first place in Real God ranking list, Jian Wushuang said in silence. Just like Real God Wu Bei, he was also on the first place of Real God ranking list when he was an Ultimate Real God. The only difference was that Jian Wushuang was only a Stage 2 ultimate real god, while real god Wu Bei only became number 1 when he was at Stage 3. In terms of power, I am slightly weaker than real god Wu Bei. Jian Wushuang knew it clearly. Jian Wushuang, make a plan to make a trip back to Lineage of Star. Hall Master Yuan suddenly said. Return to Lineage of Star? Jian Wushuang thought and he nodded. Sure. When are you planning? Hall Master Yuan asked closely. After some time, I guess. I have just gotten 500 years of cultivation time from Soaring Heaven King Palace and many demon cores. These are extremely useful to me, Jian Wushuang said. Okay then, go ahead and cultivate. Send me a message when you want to return, Hall Master Yuan said. All right, Jian Wushuang nodded. Then, he cut off the connection with Hall Master Yuan. Then, Jian Wushuang naturally had to utilize the resources that he had obtained from Soaring Heaven King Palace. Thunderbolt Island, Space-Time Fairy Palace. Jian Wushuang was sitting down calmly with his legs crossed in the middle of the 27 picture scrolls. Previously in the standalone space, when I was comprehending the 7-star picture, I saw the process of the birth of a constellation to its destruction. Due to that, my level of comprehension of the space-time doctrine and reincarnation doctrine rose greatly. Currently, I have a great amount of training time in the Fairy Palace. Hence, I must use it properly to get my comprehension of the power of Heaven Wei to achieve a whole new level in the shortest amount of time. Let's begin. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly and slowly closed his eyes after that. The comprehension of the power of Heaven Wei would become more difficult as one continued to make progress, and one picture scroll would require tens of years of comprehension. However, Jian Wushuang was very patient. Moreover, the most important thing was that he had a great amount of training time in the Fairy Palace. A total of 500 years was enough for him to spend it freely. Time continued to pass as Jian Wushuang was in a state of comprehension. In a flash, 380 years had passed. During the 380 years, Jian Wushuang spent 120 years in the Space-Time Fairy Palace. As for the remaining 260 years, he spent it in the Reincarnation Fairy Palace. During the comprehension in the 380 years, be it his comprehension of the space-time doctrine or the reincarnation doctrine, both of them advanced greatly, and he then possessed the abilities to clear the 6th level of the Doctrine Palace. Moreover, he was also extremely close to the 7th level, and he could be said to be only one step away. However, it was extremely difficult to get past that step. After all, the 7th level of the Doctrine Palace was the standard of an almighty. For a chaotic real god to make a breakthrough to become an almighty, the first requirement was for his comprehension of the power of Heaven Wei to achieve the standard needed to clear the 7th level of the Doctrine Palace. However, across many years, this requirement had stumped many real gods. Jian Wushuang had also come across a bottleneck at that stage. In order to make it past the bottleneck, it would be pointless for him to rely on comprehension in the Fairy Palace. Instead, he could only rely on other opportunities. As such, he did not use the remaining 120 years of training time in the Fairy Palace. In a dark standalone space within the Thunderbolt Island, swish, swish, all of a sudden, 2 brilliant rays of golden light lit up abruptly and pierced the void, leaving behind 2 long golden tails that looked like comets. Moreover, for the places that they passed through, the space was completely torn into pieces. Buzz, buzz. 2 rays of golden light shone fiercely and revealed themselves beside Jian Wushuang after appearing beside him. It was 2 Hongjun golden swords. I can already use 2 Hongjun golden swords proficiently. Moreover, be it speed or power, these 2 Hongjun golden swords have made a huge improvement in those 2 areas. By combining these 2 facts, I am definitely be more than 10 times more powerful compared to back then when I fought with Sir God Shenlong. If the current me were to fight with Sir God Shenlong again, even if he were to exert all his strength and not care about anything else, I would have absolute confidence that I would be able to suppress him with the 2 Hongjun golden swords. Jian Wushuang's eyes shone brilliantly and he was over the moon. When he had fought with Sir God Shenlong, be it his comprehension of the space-time doctrine or reincarnation doctrine, both of them had stopped at the standard to clear the 5th level of the Doctrine Palace. However, at that moment, his comprehension of the 2 powers of Heaven Wei had already achieved the top of the 6th level of the Doctrine Palace. Since Jian Wushuang's comprehension of the power of Heaven Wei had improved by so much, the abilities that he possessed had naturally increased as well. Thus, the unique skills, secret skills, and many other techniques that he used would naturally be more powerful. When comparing his combined abilities, he was indeed more than 10 times stronger than before. This was only him improving from the 5th level to the 6th level of the Doctrine Palace. If he were to take another step forward in the future, such that his comprehension of the power of Heaven Wei was to achieve the standard needed to clear the 7th level of the Doctrine Palace, that would be the real qualitative change. His abilities as a whole would rise even more. The current me can suppress Sir God Qianlan head-on with 2 Hongjun golden swords. However, if my comprehension of the spacetime doctrine was to take another step forward and achieve the standard needed to clear the 7th level of the Doctrine Palace, the Hongjun golden swords would be countless times stronger than they are now when I use them. At that time, by relying on the Hongjun golden swords, probably no one among the Sir Gods could be my opponent. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly, and he was filled with anticipation. Since his comprehension of the power of Heaven Wei had come across a bottleneck, it would be meaningless for him to continue to stay in the Thunderbolt Island to train. Hence, he returned to the lineage of Star straight away. Purple Moon Sanctuary, Starland. The gorgeous, gigantic Milky Way which covered the whole sky was suspended high up in the air. An ancient and exquisite silver spaceship from the outside world had appeared at the edge of the Milky Way. Jian Wushuang, who wore a blood robe and was carrying a long sword on his back, walked down from the spaceship alone. After that, he went to the interior of the Milky Way. The news of his return was only told to Hall Master Yuan alone. Moreover, he also told Hall Master Yuan to not make it public. Therefore, the lineage of Star was still extremely peaceful, just like before. Jian Wushuang was walking forward on the Milky Way slowly. His steps were slow and he headed deep inside step by step. Along the way, Jian Wushuang would occasionally see some meta-beasts which were playing wantonly in the void, as well as some lineage of Star's disciples catching them. The lineage of Star has not changed at all. Jian Wushuang laughed. However, all of a sudden, he recalled something. I left the lineage of Star for thousands of years ago. Now I've returned. I still have many impressions of the lineage of Star. However, I left my hometown for tens of thousands of years. Jian Wushuang murmured, and his eyes revealed an expression of recollection. His hometown, the Green Fire World, that was the place where he was born and raised. That was his root. Over there were also many of his close ones, brothers and good friends. No matter what reputation he would create for himself in the eternal chaotic world, and no matter how powerful he would become in the future, he would definitely not forget about that place. After being separated for tens of thousands of years, he had no idea how his hometown was doing at that moment. Moreover, there was also the giant battlefield that his hometown was near. The battlefield was unimaginably queer, and there was a high possibility that it was a battlefield of the ancient past. Furthermore, it also contained a great number of secrets. I shall return to my hometown after another period of time, when I really need to relax, Jian Wushuang thought. In no time, Jian Wushuang arrived at the base of the lineage of Star. Although Jian Wushuang had seen many disciples of the lineage of Star, he did not show himself. Instead, he headed to the constellation that Hall Master Yuan was at directly, within a cave which was completely made of special gems. Didn't you say that you have had a total of 500 years of training time in the Fairy Palace? I thought that you would only return after using up all your training time. Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang while laughing. My comprehension of the power of Heaven Wei has come across a bottleneck, and I will not be able to get past it by relying on the Fairy Palace, Jian Wushuang said helplessly. Is that so? Hall Master Yuan raised his eyebrows. If that's the case, your abilities will have definitely risen considerably as compared to before. Am I right? Jian Wushuang laughed, and he did not comment. All right, I shall not ask too much. Let's get down to business. I have called you back this time around for a certain matter. Hall Master Yuan prepared to tell Jian Wushuang about the matter. Jian Wushuang listened closely. Don't worry, it's a good thing. Hall Master Yuan smiled. When you reached the fighting power of eternal real God, you naturally became one of the Deacon Elderlies in lineage of Star. Then you injured Sir God Qianlan. In terms of power, you should not be any weaker than an ordinary almighty. According to the rules in Lineage of Star, only one with fighting power of an almighty can become a Hall Master. Hall Master? Jian Wushuang was surprised. In Lineage of Star, the highest position is naturally Palace Master, followed by the 3 Hall Masters. Among the 3 Hall Masters, besides myself, the other 2 are almighties, Hall Master Yuan said. Jian Wushuang's face grew strange when he heard that. The fighting power of an almighty could qualify one to become Hall Master. But Hall Master Yuan obviously wasn't an almighty. Hall Master Yuan seemed to see Jian Wushuang's thoughts. He said, "Don't look at me like that. I can become Hall Master because of a unique factor. You'll find out about it later on." Jian Wushuang shrugged but didn't ask. "Return to Sword Star and get ready. After some time I will throw a banquet for you. The birth of a new Hall Master is very meaningful to Lineage of Star. We can't take this lightly. I'll have all the experts of Lineage of Star to hurry their journey back to participate in the banquet. Then, I will announce it personally," Hall Master Yuan said. "All right." Jian Wushuang nodded and didn't reject. "Yeah, Lei Chao had been wandering in the 6th lair. Will he return? I'm not sure for now, but the possibility isn't high," Hall Master Yuan said. Jian Wushuang was quiet. Then he returned to Sword Star. There wasn't much that had changed on Sword Star. All the maidservants were still there, but Qiu Yu had left Lineage of Star a while back to wander outside. Jian Wushuang stayed in Sword Star as he waited. For the rest of the time, there were experts of Lineage of Star coming back one after another. Some came back from Thunderbolt Island, some came back from the 8th lair, and there were some that come back from all over Eternal Chaotic World. Just like Hall Master Yuan had described, the birth of a new Hall Master was a major event to Lineage of Star. After all, an almighty was extremely important to any force in Eternal Chaotic World and was one of the people to count on. Every extra person would increase the overall power tremendously. Lineage of Star, as one of the great forces in Eternal Chaotic World, had 3 almighties in commanding positions previously, but now there were 4. Regardless of if it was experts of real God level or disciples of Universe God level in Lineage of Star, no one wasn't thrilled when they found out about the news. In the blink of an eye, a month's time had passed. The banquet started as usual. The higher-ups in Lineage of Star, besides those who couldn't rush back in short notice, almost all of them were present. The banquet was extremely busy, and there were a few lofty thrones arranged side by side. Besides Jian Wushuang and Hall Master Yuan, there were another 2 figures seated there. Jian Wushuang, let me introduce. This is Sir God Yun, who is a big-name figure in Sanctuary Alliance, Hall Master Yuan said as he pointed at a handsome, middle-aged man who kept short hair with great height and powerful build. Big-name figure? Don't listen to him. Jian Wushuang, I'm Yun. You can call me by my name or just call me Hall Master Yun. As for Sir God Yun, it's just a title. The tall and sturdy middle-aged man, Yun, said with a hearty smile. Greetings, Hall Master Yun. Jian Wushuang behaved humbly. He knew long ago that besides Hall Master Yuan, there had been another 2 Hall Masters in Lineage of Star. However, the other 2 Hall Masters had never involved themselves with worldly affairs. Hence, he only saw them that day. This is Hall Master Gu Xian. The others refer to her as Sir God Gu Xian. Hall Master Yuan said. Hall Master Gu Xian. Jian Wushuang greeted humbly. Greetings. The extremely enchanting woman, who looked like a fairy from a painting, Hall Master Gu Xian, said. Her voice was captivating too. In Eternal Chaotic World, forget about the Almighties, even many real gods have titles. Jian Wushuang, you have the fighting power of an almighty now. Are you not giving yourself one? Title? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Yun looked towards him. Most experts had titles that belonged to them. Jian Wushuang had met many real god that had their own titles. The same went for the Almighties. The titles were many and varied, but all had their unique points. Some named themselves according to the divine weapon that they were good with or unique skill or doctrine that they comprehended. Some named themselves casually. A long time ago, when I was still back in my hometown, I was pathetically weak, but I still received the title of Sword Emperor. Jian Wushuang smiled. Sword Emperor? The surrounding 3 hall masters exchanged a look and nodded faintly. The title was given by oneself casually. It was as well without it as with it. Jian Wushuang was good with swords and he had the fighting power of a Sir God. It was normal that he would be referred to as Sword Emperor. The banquet was extremely crowded and busy. There were many real gods that got up to toast Jian Wushuang occasionally. After all, the main focus of the banquet was Jian Wushuang. During the banquet, Jian Wushuang was chatting casually with the 3 hall masters next to him. They had set up prohibitions around them so the real gods beneath couldn't listen to the content of their conversations. Jian Wushuang, I heard that you made Soaring Heaven King Palace suffer a great loss and you gained an abundant benefit from them? Hall Master Nyeyun looked at him. It did happen. Jian Wushuang nodded. Haha, well done. Soaring Heaven King Palace has always been aggressive and barbaric. I was upset with them long ago. There was a chilly gleam in Hall Master Nyeyun's eyes. Oh! Jian Wushuang looked at Hall Master Nyeyun in shock. Jian Wushuang, you might not know this, but Hall Master Nyeyun once had an issue with Soaring Heaven King Palace. He once fought against Soaring Heaven King Palace, but then he suffered a minor loss. This time, you vented his grievance on his behalf. Hall Master Yuan said. I see. Jian Wushuang understood. Humph. Soaring Heaven King Palace look down their noses down at everyone, and it is a common sight. Jian Wushuang, if you fight Soaring Heaven King Palace again in the future, show no mercy. Go ahead and kill them directly. Hall Master Nyeyun said. Actually, I'm curious. Soaring Heaven King Palace suffered such a great loss this time. Theoretically, they should be raging with anger, but why didn't they dare to fight Lineage of Star head-on? With Soaring Heaven King Palace's power, they totally have the capital to start a war with Lineage of Star. Jian Wushuang asked confusedly. He had wanted to ask that question since long ago. Comparing backgrounds, the Soaring Heaven King Palace was a lot more powerful than the Lineage of Star. In terms of abilities, be it the number of almighties who were part of the higher-ups or the number of real gods, the Soaring Heaven King Palace had the Lineage of Star beaten in both areas. As for their positions in the Sanctuary Alliance, the Soaring Heaven King Palace was at a much higher position than the Lineage of Star, and this could be seen during the distribution of the token of the Fairy Palace's legacy every 30 years. During every distribution, the Lineage of Star could only get 1 token of the Fairy Palace's legacy, while the Soaring Heaven King Palace could get 2 of them. Since the Soaring Heaven King Palace was better than the Lineage of Star in every area, they could start a war with the Lineage of Star right away. However, in the end, the Soaring Heaven King Palace Master's orders were imposing at the start, as he said that they would kill anyone who dared to stop them from killing Jian Wushuang. Indeed, they were also daring enough to kill the experts of the Lineage of Star. However, from the start to the end, they only focused on 1 expert in the Lineage of Star, and they had never threatened the Lineage of Star for real. At that moment, they had suffered huge losses. Not only did they lose many experts, they had also lost many treasures. The most important thing was that they had lost a great amount of their prestige. According to the way that the Soaring Heaven King Palace had always done their things, they should have started a war with the Lineage of Star immediately. However, in actual fact, the Soaring Heaven King Palace did not do it. After hearing Jian Wushuang's words, Hall Master Yuan and the 2 other Hall Masters looked at one another and laughed at once. Jian Wushuang, since you are already one of the Hall Masters, I can tell you some of the secrets of the Lineage of Star. Hall Master Yuan laughed. That's right. The Soaring Heaven King Palace is powerful. Their abilities as a whole and their background are a lot stronger than the Lineage of Star. However, even if more guts were loaned to them, they would still not dare to start a war with the Lineage of Star for real. From the day the Lineage of Star is founded to now, over so many years, the Lineage of Star has only fought a war against a big powerhouse for real at the start. Although that big powerhouse was inferior to the Soaring Heaven King Palace, it was not different from them by too much. However, the Lineage of Star scored a complete victory during that battle. Ever since then, all the powerhouses in the Sanctuary Alliance have dared not start a war with the Lineage of Star for real. As for the reason, You can make a guess. Jian Wushuang frowned. However, his eyes glowed with a shrill light abruptly. Could it be because of the secret skill of Star Palace? Haha, that's right. It's the secret skill of Star Palace. Hall Master Yuan laughed. You also know that the lineage of Star has 4 secret skills. However, the most popular secret skill that caused experts from everywhere in the eternal chaotic world to be fearful is the secret skill of Star Palace. This secret skill is really frightening. Jian Wushuang had a puzzled expression. He was clear that the secret skill of Star Palace was actually the secret skill of 7-Star from the 7-Star Black Sect. Hence, it was a secret skill from the ancient past and it ought to be frightening. Jian Wushuang, you have cultivated the 2nd volume of the secret skill of Star Palace. Thus, you do not need me to explain how powerful it is. As for our Palace Master, he has also cultivated the 2nd volume of the secret skill of Star Palace. When the 2nd volume of the secret skill of Star Palace is fully activated, his abilities will rise by 100 times straight away, and this will be maintained for a breath's time. Moreover, our Palace Master is an Emperor God. Furthermore, he is a well-known person among the Emperor Gods. With such abilities, if he were to unleash the 2nd volume of the secret skill of Star Palace as well, what level do you think our Palace Master would reach? Hall Master Yuan looked over with interest. Jian Wushuang was stunned. He was already a well-known person among the Emperor Gods. If he were to activate the 2nd volume of the secret skill of Star Palace as well, his abilities, Great Emperor level? Jian Wushuang said with surprise. That's right. It's Great Emperor level. Hall Master Yuan laughed. During the great battle between the lineage of Star and the big powerhouse back then, it became a one-sided suppression as the Palace Master unleashed the secret skill of Star Palace at the very start. As such, he killed 3 almighties which included 1 Emperor God of that big powerhouse with lightning speed. Therefore, how could that big powerhouse not be defeated? That's it. Jian Wushuang became shocked as he listened. He finally understood why the soaring Heaven King Palace dared not start a war with the lineage of Star. It was because of the Star Palace Master being a great deterrent. After all, although it was only for a breath's time, he possessed great Emperor-level fighting capabilities. Moreover, when the secret skill of Star Palace was used, one had to wait for a period of time before being able to use it again. However, the fighting capabilities that could only last for a breath's time were enough to strike the soaring Heaven King Palace with terror. As such, the soaring Heaven King Palace dared to take the initiative to kill the experts of the lineage of Star, and they even dared to kill the top geniuses of the lineage of Star. However, as for starting a great battle with the lineage of Star, in particular, a great battle where they would fight to their last breath, they did not have the courage to do so as they were frightened. Palace Master, a man in a responsible position. Jian Wushuang gasped in admiration. He is indeed a man in a responsible position. With the Palace Master keeping watch, the lineage of Star also has a high position in the Sanctuary Alliance. Even though we have provoked some strong enemies and powerhouses, no one among them can do anything to the lineage of Star. For example, many powerhouses were envious of us because of the priceless white blaze fruit tree that you obtained back then. However, no one dared to cast their greedy eyes on it. Although that was mostly due to the Purple Moon Great Emperor, those powerhouses were also quite fearful of our Palace Master. Hall Master Yuan laughed. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. Previously, he had not known much about the Star Palace Master. He only knew that the Star Palace Master was an Emperor God with strong abilities and he had founded the lineage of Star. Moreover, he was fortunate to obtain the secret skill of 7-Star, of the 7-Star Black Sect. However, Jian Wushuang did not know how important the Star Palace Master was in the lineage of Star. It is fortunate for the lineage of Star to have such a super expert keeping watch. However, everything has its pros and cons, Jian Wushuang murmured. To a sect, it was indeed good for them to have a man in a responsible position. However, if the man in a responsible position did not have some experts who could bear some heavy responsibilities beside him, it would definitely be a disaster for the sect if the man in a responsible position were to fall. It would be even more of a disaster especially if the sect possessed treasures that could catch the greedy eyes of many people and had also offended quite a number of experts from other powerhouses. Oh right, Jian Wushuang, There's something that I am very curious about. Hall Master Nye Yun questioned abruptly. By using real God Han Quan to threaten the soaring Heaven King Palace, you obtained many benefits from them. In particular, I understand why you got 100,000 doctrine gems and 500 years of training time in the Fairy Palace. After all, you need them. However, as for the demon cores, why do you need so many demon cores? Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Gu Xian also looked over. They were curious as well. Jian Wushuang laughed at once. To tell you the truth, I wanted those demon cores so that I could absorb the pure power within them to make my divine power more powerful. An inverse cultivator like me is very different from a normal cultivator. At the level of a real god, the thickness of divine power is extremely important to me as it is the key to me making a breakthrough. However, relying on myself to train continuously and accumulate divine power is too slow. If I were to absorb demon cores, I could accumulate divine power a lot faster. Is that so? The three Hall Masters understood at once. If it's demon cores, the lineage of Star will have quite a number of them. Do you have enough demon cores on your hands now? If you do not have enough, I can give you some right away, Hall Master Yuan said. If it's enough? It's definitely not enough. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly. He knew clearly that ultimate divine power water droplet would be more difficult to precipitate as he progressed further. He had obtained quite a number of demon cores from soaring Heaven King Palace. However, even if he absorbed all of them, Jian Wushuang reckoned he would at most precipitate 20 or maybe 30 ultimate divine power water droplets. He would still be far from the 100 drops needed to break through and become a stage 3 ultimate real god. I just got many grade 3 demon cores from soaring Heaven King Palace. Just to absorb all of the demon cores will require a very long time. So, I'll wait till I absorb all the demon cores before I come to ask for more from Hall Master Yuan, Jian Wushuang replied. Tell me directly when you need it, Hall Master Yuan said. Actually, if it is about the accumulation of divine power, there are more ways to absorb them from demon cores. You can also use natural treasures, Hall Master Gu Xian said. To be frank, my divine power is unusual. Any ordinary treasure for the accumulation of divine power won't be much help to me. Only some extremely precious natural treasure will be effective for me. Plus, I would require a terrifying amount of them. If I were to rely on natural treasure to accumulate divine power, I reckon even Lineage of Star couldn't support me, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. He wasn't joking about what he said. Previously, he had thought about relying on natural treasure to precipitate 100 drops of ultimate divine power water droplet. However, the price was too high. It was even higher than a white blaze fruit tree. He naturally couldn't live in luxury like that. We don't have any ordinary natural treasures and we couldn't support any high-valued treasure, but I have heard of a place that might be useful for the accumulation of divine power, Hall Master Gu Xian said. Oh! Jian Wushuang immediately looked at Hall Master Gu Xian. What place? Divine Pond of Absolute Beginning. Hall Master Gu Xian squinted her eyes. Of course, I've only heard about it from other people. It is said that an expert obtained a drop of absolute beginning divine power from an ancient battlefield. Then, she brought it back and it naturally developed and evolved into a divine pond. The divine pond is 999,999 zhang deep. It is huge and it contains boundless absolute beginning divine power. Plus, absolute beginning divine power is extremely pure. It is said that the power is 10 times purer compared to the power contained in the demon cores. On top of that, it is much easier to absorb. There was one time when a severely injured emperor god, who was on the brink of death, entered the divine pond of absolute beginning, and he resumed his peak state in 3 years' time. What? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Nye Yun next to him were shocked too. It was obvious that it was their first time hearing about divine pond of absolute beginning as well. As for the effect of the divine pond, an emperor god on the brink of death, he recovered in 3 years. He was an emperor god. The stronger one's power was, the more difficult it was for one to recover after injury. Jian Wushuang, you need to absorb a large amount of pure power now to accumulate your divine power. In eternal chaotic world, I'm afraid there is nowhere with purer power than absolute beginning divine power from divine pond of absolute beginning, Hall Master Gu Xian said. Hall Master Gu Xian, do you know where the divine pond of absolute beginning is? Jian Wushuang asked. He was very interested in the divine pond of absolute beginning. After all, if divine pond of absolute beginning were to be that impressive, his divine power could totally be accumulated to the maximum in the shortest time possible. I've only heard about divine pond of absolute beginning. As for its actual location and its actual owner, I have no idea. Hall Master Gu Xian shook her head. However, there's a person who would likely know where the divine pond of absolute beginning is located. After all, I found out about the existence of divine pond of absolute beginning from him. Who's that person? Jian Wushuang asked closely. That person. He's a strange man, also a madman. He stays on Thunderbolt Island now. His name is called Mad Dog, Hall Master Gu Xian said. It's him. Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Nyayun were shocked. Mad Dog. Jian Wushuang was stunned and he immediately thought of a person. When he had first got to Thunderbolt Island, he met a strange elderly. The strange elderly had seen him and guided him to master his power superposition skill. His 10,000 wave skill was based on the power superposition skill. But after he had mastered the skill, the strange elderly had become unhappy and wanted to recruit him as his disciple. It was a pity that Jian Wushuang had rejected him. Then Jian Wushuang had found out that the strange elderly was the strangest almighty in the entire Sanctuary Alliance on Thunderbolt Island. His name was Mad God and he had no other title. Almost everyone called him Mad Dog, but as they had scruples about his identity as an almighty, they would call him Sir God Mad Dog. Sir God Mad Dog liked to eat the most. Back then, Sir God Mad Dog expressed his interest in white blaze fruit and wanted to get a few white blaze fruit from Jian Wushuang, but he hadn't had any then. Jian Wushuang, do you know Sir God Mad Dog? Hall Master Gu Xian looked at him. I do? Jian Wushuang smiled. Not only that, I also have his communication token. He offered it to me. Communication token? Hall Master Gu Xian and the others were shocked. One should know that although Sir God Mad Dog wasn't a nice name, he was arrogant and obstinate. He behaved completely lawlessly in Sanctuary Alliance. He held no scruples against anyone and showed no consideration for anyone's feelings. It was naturally extremely difficult to get his communication token. At least Hall Master Yuan, Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Nyayun definitely didn't have it. But Jian Wushuang did, and it had been Sir God Mad Dog who had offered it to him. As Sir God Mad Dog offered his communication token to you, it means that you shared a friendly moment. You can go and ask him. Hall Master Gu Xian smiled. Jian Wushuang nodded. Then he suddenly turned to look at Hall Master Yuan and said, Speaking of Sir God Mad Dog, I nearly forgot about this. He is very interested in white blaze fruit. Hall Master Yuan, is there a white blaze fruit left in Lineage of Star? There are a few more, and it will not be too long until the next fruiting of white blaze fruit tree. How many do you need? Hall Master Yuan asked. 2 will be enough. Sir God Mad Dog is only a greedy eater. He isn't using it for cultivation. Jian Wushuang smiled. Sure. After the banquet ends, I'll get them for you, Hall Master Yuan promised. In the lofty hall, the banquet was still ongoing. Then Hall Master Yuan suddenly stood up and raised his glass. His loud and bright voice reverberated in the hall. Come on, everyone. Let us toast Hall Master Wushuang. Everyone in the hall stood up simultaneously. Cheers! After eating and drinking, the banquet ended.